You're gonna be first on the agenda, we're
You
gonna
can take some.
switch it around a little bit.
Okay, that's great.
And
Do you like to paint?
I do, very much.
I do too.
Very much, I'm learning that from my dad. It drives me nuts when I see people like on TV or in a show or something, taking a paintbrush and holding it like this
Yeah.
and going, no, you don't, you take it like, I don't have something.
You do it delicately,
Yeah, well,
it's
yeah,
delicate.
you hold it like this.
Yes, and it's like a
And you-
wrist, it's a
yeah.
wrist thing.
Yeah, you don't like take it like.
Okay.
I know.
It drives
Sadly.
me crazy. But
I
then,
hear you.
yeah.
That's, anyway, so that's.
Just to give you a heads up,
All
Yeah.
should
the email that I sent out, this packet, I think it got cut and put into two. And so some of the exhibits for the road material storage part, the second one, it all wasn't included in the email, but it's all right here.
Okay.
So, sorry about that.
No, that's
I
fine.
didn't really get a chance to look at email, but I looked at this last night.
Oh, perfect, okay, sweet.
And I'm trying to talk Jen into getting some stuff. A little bit resistant.
She's a no nonsense.
I do want a little desk lamp, so I'm good,
I'm gonna see if those are still in there.
it's right here, look.
Windows were-
Well, there's one.
Yeah.
A disco ball, she could disco
Oh,
ball.
my
Oh, yeah.
Jen,
Well, it's like.
Those windows work?
Disco ball.
Sorry?
those windows work? Do the
Jen.
windows work? Yeah.
There's two more in there.
Okay,
These.
let me open up this door for
So,
sure.
Oh, okay.
anyway, see y'all later.
Okay,
Bye.
I'll
I'll
see
see you tomorrow afternoon. Alright, see you
Well,
later.
Friday again.
You can try,
Yeah,
oh,
good
yeah.
to see you.
How you doing?
But
Good, how are you?
And try to call.
Good.
Okay.
I don't
Carol?
know if it was.
I'm doing well, how are you?
Okay, alright, see you.
Sing. Help me remember names though.
Jake,
Jake,
Jake Cooper.
And Doug.
Good. I'm not at planning commission much and that's all. I don't see it as much.
And that's okay.
Beautiful day out there.
Sorry.
Oh, they do work.
Yeah, I didn't know if they stayed, but yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, this one doesn't.
Hello, hey Kathy, how are you doing? Good, how are you?
Hello Kathleen, how are you?
Good. You?
I'm doing well, thank you.
How are you?
Are you? Trying to find one that fits.
Well,
There's a control way to your right on the back.
going back.
Right here. That's the up and down. Right It's that right there. Go down. Probably, I think you need to be sitting on it when you go down. It's-
I'll move chairs.
Yeah, you have to be smarter than the chair, which is tricky. You're chairing the session tonight, right?
Pardon me?
You're the chair tonight, right?
Yeah, it's not gonna last a real long time, but,
So you're not going to, or it's not?
that's just me.
I asked Jen and Rick, and we've got the training scheduled first with me, but, you know, usually we should do that to the
I think that's right.
hearings and
Yeah.
with respect to the public, et cetera.
I
There's no reason for them to wait around.
Okay.
Not said meeting any way you like.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
This is kind of like a procedure for most lawyers.
First one, you got.
Yeah, okay. John, why do we need to do a change in use? It's in the commercial zone, that's allowed in the commercial zone.
It's-
Just now,
Oh,
I know.
okay,
It's because it's a change of use from the Dusty Tea Rose to a hotel. That's,
but they're both allowed.
they're both allowed, but it's just a change of use that they're doing, so things just need to be checked out. They're changing things. I mean, it's allowed, they're not saying it's not allowed.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
I just didn't know we would have to go through a change
Site
of use
plan
for that.
review of this. How you doing, Rick?
Yeah, we started doing it upon Safe Bill's request, since it's a change to type of business that's being used, so they would have to,
Just a special use permit. Right, boutique hotel is allowed as a
Yes.
special use. That's a special use. Right.
I would thought it was one of the standard uses.
Well, let's look, but, let's look.
Wasn't it a hotel?
District, is it?
It was a long time ago.
yeah,
What's the zoning? What's the zoning?
it's mixed,
Mixed, historic mixed use or something?
yeah.
Okay, let's look.
I believe it was the St. James before, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's a beautiful day. It's a neighborhood.
We didn't know that.
Yeah.
You just got that?
You were here before me, sucker.
Hello.
It's chairwoman.
Second last. Okay, let's call the meeting of the planning commission, on June 21st, 2023, to order, and let's have a roll call.
Ed Hoover. Here. Alex Cordillo.
Here.
Jake Cooper.
Here.
Doug Roscoff.
Present.
Kathleen Hecht.
I'd like to amend the agenda and move the planning commission training down to the bottom of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So the first item on the agenda is a public hearing for special use permit consideration for Darla Greenwald. And I'm assuming that's your, that's it. And did you find anything?
Yeah, it's lodging units, bed and breakfast are special uses in
Oh,
the
they are.
entire district.
Okay.
So it requires public hearing.
So was that lodging and bed and breakfast, or?
Those are just two separate,
Those are
possible
separate,
categories.
Yeah.
That's what, that's
Both of
why
them are
bed and
special
breakfast
uses
is
in
not
those
allowed.
zones.
Okay,
You're on.
okay, yeah, so I'm planning to just convert the 614 Rose Street to a boutique inn, 7 rooms, 7 bathrooms. And also, one of the special considerations we're doing is removing the commercial kitchen that is in there now. We're not going to have a restaurant at the inn. And so we're removing including that, and then we're adding 7 rooms and 7 bathrooms. We currently will have 4 parking spaces on site, and I have contacted the adjacent owners, and they're both receptive to leasing 4 more, 3 more spaces as needed to us for the additional parking.
So you're not serving any food at all?
No, so not any prepared food that's prepared there. We might bring in pastries or something from a bakery or something like that for breakfast, but otherwise, yes, no, we're not preparing any food.
Motion.
Well, you wanna make sure that
If you have any
there's a
questions.
public hearing, if there's questions.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
And if there's public hearing
There's
online,
people, okay.
you know, I would
You
I'm
have
not
one online.
quite that. One of the planners who's gonna join us, is that right, Rick?
Yes, I believe that they're on it, they were just waiting for us to.
I sent him a direct link, we have attendees. It is, Mike Davenport, one of the attendees, and if so, can you tell me, I don't see your name, so I'm not sure which one to promote to be a panelist. I only see 4 people, true, I don't think any of them are him.
All right, I'm gonna contact them right now.
And while Rick's doing that, nothing wrong with any of the other members having questions of the applicant.
You know what, I think I forgot to tell him that we just switched the time. I'm gonna call him if that's okay, guys.
Well, we are excited to have you in town.
Darla, nice to meet you, I'm Rick, by the way.
Oh,
You
hi.
didn't talk to me.
Yeah, it's fun to meet you.
Did you just move to Georgetown?
Well, no, I don't live here, so I lived in Eagle. I used to live in Castle Rock, and then we decided to move up to Eagle, and I just found this.
So you currently
You know,
reside
I love Georgetown. I currently own a B&B in Surrey.
They put
We
the
call it
train
Clipper Inn.
in.
You ever wanna stay there?
You know.
It's really great. And so I kinda got
Okay, perfect. We'll see you.
lodging, you know, on the train.
Guys. Bye-bye. He's logging in now.
Okay.
So we're changing the special use from what to what, I guess is what I need to make sure I'm clear on. So currently it's what, and this application is changing it to special use,
Yeah,
correct?
so currently it's a mixed-use building
Okay,
with retail shops below. It was an old tea shop where you can buy tea and some other knickknacks, and above it was lodging units where you can rent out a room.
It wasn't residential?
Yes, the upstairs was.
Okay.
And I believe the code requires a special use because the whole building, in order to do the application, the whole building has to be the same zoning, not a mixed zoning. And that's why she's wanting to rezone it. And that requires a special use.
It was already for mixed use.
Correct. Yeah. Which is in the mixed use zoning, doesn't mean the building has to be mixed use, but for the use that she wants, it has to be a single use.
gotcha.
If that makes sense.
And along with that, I thought I had found mention, when I was trying to find it again, was, so previously, it was more the same use of what she's trying to change it back to, is that correct?
Yes, it was previously, I guess, the St. James Hotel and
Gallery
saloon or
downstairs,
something,
yeah.
but yeah, something like that. So I'm changing it into the St. James Inn, and I'm just kind of incorporating the old name, you know, into the new
Are
name.
there currently tenants in the building?
No, it's vacant.
So our planner is on Zoom now, so
Oh, okay.
Is it appropriate to ask for any report from the recommendation from the planning staff, which is Mike Davenport, he's right up there.
Yes, hello. Yes, Rick had sent to me and Barb Cole, we're the interim planners for the town of Georgetown. He had sent the packet information. We both reviewed it, and our finding was that the application with the recommended conditions that we're suggesting would comply with the criteria for review for approval of the proposed special use permit.
Mike, can you elaborate on the recommended conditions, and are they in the staff report in the back of the top?
No, they're not in the staff report, but I was just working on those before the meeting. There's four specific points that we wanted to make. Number one is regarding parking, that there be a binding agreement with regular notice that the agreement is still in effect regarding the use of the off-site parking location, and that agreement be in a form acceptable to the town attorney. And Rick has told me that the intention is that there will be an annual renewal that will be done, and at each year, it would be verified that, yes, there still is an agreement regarding the parking in place. Recommended condition number 2 has to do with the kitchens and cooking areas. The municipal code in the definition for the individual lodging units states that there isn't a kitchen in the individual lodging units. And so we just wanted to make sure, we wanted to verify that that is the case, that there aren't any cooking or kitchen facilities within the individual units.
Right, no, there is not.
Okay. Number 3 is to verify that there are no encroachments or easements that might interfere with this property being developed as proposed by the applicant. And finally, number 4 is that approval would be subject to any other approvals required by the town, in particular a building permit, because of the unique requirements that apply to making use of an existing building, and in the fact that it has, in maybe some ways, more restrictions than what would be required by the International Building Code. So to say that more succinctly is that it needs to have approval by the building permit and any other permits required by the town. And those are the 4 recommended conditions.
Mike, can I ask you about this is about encroachment? This is it's a platted lot at 614 Rose, I assume, or more than one platted lot.
Yeah, there's a couple.
There's a couple typically. Was there a concern looking at the site plan or whatever that there might be an easement encroachment?
Well, the document that's been provided as part of the application is referred to as an ILC, which is not the same as a survey. Now, typically when a property is bought, there usually is a portion of the report that has to do with the insurance in buying the property that addresses these types of issues. So typically that's the easiest place to check, is in the title report that would have been done for the property to see whether or not there were any encroachments or easements on this property. We don't have any information that there are, but it's something that is typically checked to make sure there aren't any that would interfere.
I think the building is on the lot line as referenced in the title report, and so it could possibly be encroaching into city property, because it's on the corner lot there, but we can't really change that because we are not tearing the building down, so.
Yeah, I think what I would, and I'm sure members of the commission might have questions of you or the applicant, Mike, on what you said. When the commission gets ready to take an action, I can suggest a motion that would incorporate those conditions in a way that would work. But I don't want to race to the end here because we've got this hearing. People show up, everybody's got a right talk and ask questions. It's only 11 minutes after 6. So there's that. So really, I'd encourage questions of the applicant or of the planner from anyone on the commission.
One other thing, and I don't necessarily know who to direct it to, but the historic commercial district has reference in here, so does that have some meaning that the outside has to stay relatively the same and they can do different things on the inside, or what is that?
That's correct.
Okay, and is that the intent?
Yes, that is the intent, and we're even using original signing, signage from St. James Hotel, they're just altering it a little bit. And we already have the approval from the Historic Review Committee and everything, so.
And the document submitted by the applicant note the paint colors that are being used, which usually is not an issue.
Yeah, they said that they said I could paint it whatever color. But it will be like white and gray and some other colors in there.
Have you been in front of the DRC design?
Yes, and so they.
Is there, do they have anything like a recommendation?
Yeah, that advisory thing is,
Okay,
yeah, here's it.
great. Okay, DRC says since no exterior changes are proposed, finds the building returning to original use to be appropriate, so it's not often you get 2 lines of approval from DRC, I gotta say. Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Any other members of the public want to testify on this?
Were there any written comments? Did the clerk check if there were any written comments submitted by anyone?
Yeah, there was not. Thank you.
Well, I can suggest a motion if you'd
Okay,
like.
yes.
Yeah,
Somebody make a motion, please?
I can suggest a
Oh, I
line.
see, okay.
I think you want to incorporate
Sure.
the conditions as
Yeah.
described. Somebody can say so moved, but only if you like what you hear. You can fix it. A proper motion would be to move to approve the special use permit application from Darla Greenwald at 614 Rose Street for a boutique hotel with the following conditions: that binding lease or agreement for the off-site parking be provided for the town attorney's review and approval, and that lease be that lease be renewed at least on an annual basis, and if the lease is not renewed, that the special use permit would expire and have to come back to this board for reapproval, since your approval is in large part reliant upon the fact that they're going to provide parking, so that's one. That no kitchen facilities will be permitted in any individual room units. That and I'm happy to do it, that the title insurance or policy that you got, I assume, when you acquired the property, be provided to, and I'm happy to review it, to confirm that there are no encroachments that prevent the use proposed down it. And lastly, that the applicant obtain any other required permits, principally building permits, to the extent there's interior remodel. That would be the motion.
Second?
So,
I so move.
Oh,
he made it. Yeah.
Doug moved, Jake second. I got it, right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion, as stated by the town attorney, and is incorporated. How do we incorporate this at this point? Just take it straight off the recording?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
Jen and I, for stuff like this, Jen and I look at the draft minutes, when she produces them,
okay,
but having made the motion and approved it on the record, we
Okay.
completed this action.
okay. So you were to
Yeah, that'd be
Thank you,
very
and
nice to
welcome.
have there.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Welcome to Georgetown.
On to the next step, okay.
On to the next
step.
There you go.
And we have a public hearing for a special use permit consideration for the town of Georgetown. Parcel number 1959-051-00-903. Vacant land off Argentine Street, north of the wastewater plant, and for a road and bridge department to use as a road material storage yard. Any staff comments on this one?
Yes, this is an application by the town for use of this town-owned property within the Parks and Open Space Zone District to use that area as a material yard to serve the Road and Bridge Department. This is a allowed special use under Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code. And again, you were looking at the same three criteria as previously stated, or as it were in the previous application. Our finding is that the application does comply with the three criteria, subject to one recommended condition, and that is to verify the proposed storage location is not in a wetland area. I will note that there was a letter received from the DRC with several concerns that they expressed, and that's included in the packet that you received. Materials on the application, the location, photographs, and so forth have been provided to the Planning Commission members. A notice has been given for this application, and the town administrator will be giving you a presentation regarding this application.
All right, thank you, Mike. I guess I want to start with, I was hired over a year ago, and one of the priorities from the council was to find an appropriate land space so that we can move the millings out from and reposition them in order to reclaim the event parking space. And that's in Argentine. So that was a priority even when I was hired to try to figure this thing out. They kind of thought about doing a joint space of a new shop where they can store materials, and vice versa. The issue that they were having at the time was when the interstate gets shut down, it's hard to get over to the other side. And so could they store materials over there? And the answer is they could. However, they already have a lot of storage over there, and they needed a site that they can dedicate just for road-based materials. After taking some months to investigate our properties, we located a spot that was actually prime for this. It was a great space, it just needed to be cleared. At the time we went down to discuss it with with Road and Bridge. We began to do a lot of research about the property, the town-owned property, and that's where Mr. Graham and I had many discussions. So it was probably 8 months ago, many discussions about the property. One of the questions at hand was, whose property is it? And after doing research, it was very clear this is town-owned property. It was given by the BLM, and it was then annexed into the town, and it was under the Open Space and Parks District. And so that we began to check early on about, is this an appropriate use under that district? And so after doing the research, it's pretty obvious that it does fit under it. It's a municipal use, and we have a municipal use. In the same time, trying to figure out the best situation, I spent the last 3 months developing this application. So this was not done hastily. This was done in a very thoughtful situation where we tried to figure out how we planned this. We also reached out to the EPA and the CDPHE, because we wanted to make sure this was stored properly. Walking the property, we noticed, trying to answer questions. Unfortunately, there is a document from the DRC that they show concerns. I was not able to attend that meeting. I believe that meeting should have been tabled, continued for information that I could have presented and answered there. And so you have a memo from them that they do show concerns. I gave a response letter so that you can see my response to all 5 concerns. And so I just want to bring that up since that was the most recent. And also, if you can, Jen, if you can pull up the packet so that they can see online as well.
Rick, is that the June 15th letter that I'm looking at?
Yes, correct. Yes, correct. So the first concern, and by the way, Mr. Graham and I have been trying to work together in order to allow Mr. Graham access to his back lot. After doing the research, we don't have to do this. It's town-owned property. We found state statute, actually, Jerry actually helped me find this. State statute that shows, after 18 years, there's an easement grandfathered in if people have a case like that, but there's an exception when it's town-owned or county-owned land. That is not one of those things. However, I'm not here to say that we're trying to do that. We're trying to work out a situation with Mr. Graham. But we're also, at the same time, trying to figure out the best use for our space and also be good neighbors at the same time to allow him access. So I want to go through the concerns because I think it's important for you guys to hear it. I did a site visit yesterday to show you the situations. And so as we go through, so I'm going to look at the first one. The location of the industrial material in the Parks Open Space District. So that was the first one. There was a concern that this was industrial use. And so I just want to highlight that this falls under the use with the special use under the code, section 17.16.050C1, that mentions that this is appropriate. Just to also, though it's open space / parks are open space, that doesn't mean that it has to be a park. This space will never be a park. It was never designed to be a park. It's not on our comprehensive plan to be a park. It's not under the desires of the board of selectmen to be a park. It's just property that we annexed for potential use in the future. Well, we've come to find out what we now want to use that space for. So this, though it is millings, it's asphalt millings, it's technically called like RAP is what they term it under Environmental Protection Agency. And we'll look at that in a minute of what their suggestions were as they understand the situation. The second one is the concern of clearing trees in a wetland area. I have taken pictures to kind of show and also walked you through showing that the intention is not to clear trees. The intention is to clear brush and the tall brush that's grown up in order to maximize the space. And so the question of wetlands, that's going to be answered later, but that's really not to, we're not there to try to remove trees. We're trying to make it still a secluded area that we can store our materials. As far as wetlands area, I don't believe this is a wetlands area at all. I believe that this area was manipulated to bring a water in and pulled up, but that is not what this is a wetlands area. It's just the creek is on the other side of the road on Alvarado. There is a runoff that's turned into that, and then the creek has been manipulated and turned into a little pond, and that's not a wetlands area. So I'm just highlighting that. The third concern was visibility from I-70 surrounding homes and Argentine Street. There's no homes down there. This is not a residential area. The visibility from I-70, I took pictures. In fact, if you would go to, here's my pictures. Let me find that picture, sorry. So there's a section, if you scroll down to pictures, it says view from I-70. And I believe I have 2 pictures of that.
Like one of the first ones.
Yeah, so if you find the pictures, it looks like grass with an 18-wheeler at the top. If you scroll down to find that picture. I took pictures to kind of show what it looks like from standing in the site where the millings were, looking up. The guardrail basically blocks most of the view, but you can't really see that area very well at all. And then I took a picture of a car. The next picture is a car, and you can barely see the hood of the car, the roof of the car. So it's not in visual sight. So I think that addresses that concern. Because if you were to look at the next picture after that, it's called Views from I-70 of Events Parking Area and Current Loading Stage. You can clearly see that from I-70, and this has never been brought up as a concern to the town, that they see the millings in a prominent commercial area. That it's never been brought up. And so, and you know, I can understand that. It's in a harsh view where this relocation site is actually barely even seen. You wouldn't even know it because you can't see it. So I think that addresses that concern. Number 4, the town-owned property, oh, wait a minute, no, I've already addressed that. I would make the comment as far as, if you're concerned about visibility of the millings in the site, then you should also be equally concerned with the junk that's in front of the access entrance to Mr. Graham's property that he has. That's been there for a long time. And also, you should be equally concerned with the junk that's in the back of the lot that you probably can see from I-70 if you can see the millings. I would suspect you probably can't see that, but if you're concerned with that visibility, then that's a more of a harsh visibility that you're seeing from I-70. And I showed the pictures of that too, but that's from the first pictures of showing the access to Mr. Graham's property. He's got it with old tires and abandoned cars, and there's just a lot of stuff out there. And if you look into the property, as you go through the town-owned property, there is a lot of junk. There's an RV that's operating illegally, that the zone M, it's Mountain Residential -1, does not allow occupancy of a residential or an RV unit. I contacted the county about it, and they confirmed that that is illegal. And so the stuff would probably need to be removed because it's an eyesore to the community. If that's the concern, if it is residential focused, if the residential homes around there are concerned about this, then they should be equally concerned with the contents on the property. Number 4, I addressed the wetlands in this section. And you can see in the pictures, the stream is clearly manipulated. So if you keep scrolling through those pictures of the stream, you can see that it is, it's manipulated to follow the way that it's going.
So let me just pause on that one. Who determines what is and is not a wetlands? I mean, I'm understanding what you're telling me, but I mean, is the EPA that makes that judgment?
They never called it out. I submitted the whole report to them, and they just responded of how I should properly sort them.
Okay.
So.
I believe it's the Army Corps of Engineers that has responsibility for wetland areas.
So, the question is wetlands, was it wetlands or was it manipulated to be the area that it's in right now? But it's a tiny creek that comes off the runoff of the creek that's been turned into this property. And it's not on the town-owned property, by the way. So we don't have the creek on our property. That's on Mr. Graham's property. And so, you'll have your turn, just a second. Number 5, concerned about the adverse effects on adjacent property and access, well, concerns on adjacent property, concerns about access and change of use. And so I think I've already communicated that to you. We're not doing any adverse effects, we're just storing our millings, and then we're gonna do the appropriate response that the CDPHE recommended of how to store this properly. Access, I have agreed as town to allow Mr. Graham access. We will probably move our entryway road over to the east just a little bit in order to maximize the space. And I showed pictures in there of that, so you should all have that in a packet. It'll be open, just moved over, but it would not affect the trees and any kind of wetlands whatsoever, even though the wetlands are not on our property.
That's Exhibit F.
So we are not gonna restrict access to Mr. Graham in order to access his rear lot. However, I do believe that allowing somebody through town property to live in an RV is a concern for the town and shall be addressed by the county. And the county code enforcement officer is already looking at the situation. The county planning director has already done a site visit with me to look at the situation. And that is something that is aside from this, but will be addressed by the county. And so that's gonna be something as far as access. The intention is not to restrict access. However, if the relationship does not show as a favorable relationship between the two, then we will move to restrict access.
My question then is, why do you have to let him have access anyplace in that property?
I know, and that was my question that I asked Mr. Graham months and months ago. He has access, but it's blocked off. If he removed the junk from that, he would have access to the back part of his property, but that's a decision that he can make. I'm not here to cause friction in that. I'm willing to be good neighbors with him. We are addressing the concerns that he brought up to the DRC that I believe are unfounded, and that's why I responded in this way. I believe the pictures tell the story. The site visit tells the story of showing what's on the property. And so I open this up now for your questions. If you have any questions for me, and then Mr. Grant could then respond.
I don't have any questions for you, but I have some questions. So there's a culvert that runs underneath Argentine from the creek over to his property, and I'm just wondering how it got there. Was it the town's doing? Was it the county's doing? Was it, you did that?
I can answer those questions.
Okay.
Okay, but pause first. Let's make sure that are asking any questions or address anything, and then you'll have a chance.
Go ahead.
I'm not really versed in why he has had access in that property. Why?
Well, based on my observations, is he has a tenant that lives in a trailer, an RV, not the one that's been moved down there from a truck, so it
Excuse
cannot.
me, I'd like to just cut in right now.
Not yet,
That's
Mr.
the
Graham, not
case.
yet. It's not appropriate.
Okay, well, it's not the case.
It's not appropriate. There's an RV that's been dropped off down there. It's been there. There's a tenant that lives in the RV. I have pictures of him down there. I've spoke to him. He's confirmed that he lives in the RV. It's not a trailer. It's an RV, recreational vehicle. He's confirmed that he lives in that RV, and that's the access. That's the only access that he has, because the other access is blocked off.
But that's our property right there, right?
Say that again?
That is our property.
That's correct.
Property, where he's And then.
Where
Where the RV is,
the RV is not, it is not.
yeah,
our
there's,
property.
you can see that in this picture here.
Yeah, so the property basically it's like, almost like cones, like a pizza pie,
Okay,
and at the very end is where the RV is placed,
out of the back.
right, outside of our property. And that is also zoned, county property.
Okay.
Ours is zoned town property with our district.
And he's not in that area.
That's correct,
Okay.
that's correct.
Madam Chair, other questions that the commission would have of the applicant?
I just, one last one, I guess. So these are DRC findings, or how did DRC come to these?
So what happened is, the application went to the DRC, the DRC does a basic review, and then they make a recommendation to this board. I was not able to go to actually answer those questions. Mr. Graham went and proposed all 5 of those concerns, and they also realized that these were concerns that should be addressed, but they did not table the meeting for answers. What they did is they just sent the recommendation with concerns.
Understand. I know you mentioned that at the beginning, so I was just making sure this was from the DRC, not from a specific person. So,
That's correct.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so,
Public testimony?
yeah, so we're ready for any public testimony.
Okay, well, there's a lot to get to here. And, my daughter is attending, Vivian here, is my daughter.
What's her name, please?
Give your name.
My name is Graham Russell, and my daughter is Vivian Russell. And, Vivian, would you like to go first, or?
Sure. I don't know what you're gonna say, Dad, but I'm happy just to go first because, yeah, I can just give you, can everybody hear me? This is a little bit of a different Zoom format than I'm used to. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We were good.
Hey, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I live about 6 hours away, so I'm sitting now in Norwood, Colorado. But I just wanted to kind of maybe, we're talking a lot of facts here, and I see you've done a lot of research on this. I guess my appeal for what's happening, for what I see happening, might be a little bit more of an emotional, historical perspective. But our family is first generation Coloradan. My grandparents bought that property. So my dad's parents bought that property from when they were living in Denver in the 40s as their kind of cabin getaway property. So I forget which birthday, but my dad tells stories. There's a little historic cabin. So if you can see past some of the junk that was referenced, there is a nice little historic cabin down there it's become a bit overrun and hard to upkeep. But that was the family cabin growing up in the 40s and 50s that my dad enjoyed with his friends. And there's lots of slideshows and fond memories of fishing on the property. And this is before I-70 was ever built. So you can imagine it was a much different environment. But this was a very special place for my grandparents. And as you can imagine, as I grew up, this was also a place that we would retreat to every weekend in Denver. So this was a really, it just holds a really special nostalgic place in our family's hearts. We would go fishing there. My grandmother would take me to do gravestone rubbings at the Georgetown Cemetery. She would take me all around Georgetown and teach me about the history. As I got older, my mother would run in the Georgetown Half Marathon. I can remember cheering her on from Alvarado Road. My uncle would take me fishing, and Dad take me fishing in the early mornings, trout fishing. And we had multiple encounters with trespassers, but they were really, recreationalists who really always enjoyed coming to use that property. So I just have a few notes here about that. But yeah, my grandmother would always make donations to the handy camp down the road. And I'm just trying to, I guess, paint a picture of this, that our family for many, many years has been very good friends of Georgetown. And Georgetown has a really truly beloved place in all of our hearts. In 5th grade, I wrote my 5th grade essay about the Anderson General Store. We were friends with the Andersons. In middle school, I did my science project with some friends. We studied the environmental impact of the mall that was being proposed for the wetlands just outside the lake. And we did a whole science board on how that mall was going to impact the environment and the local recreation by bringing in a big project. So, you know, I've been deeply aware of the Georgetown history, culture, and it's just always been a special place in my heart. We grew up cleaning trash up along the embankment that would fall down. And, you know, the dream of our family dream was always to build a home. My parents always planned on putting a second home there, so that, you know, eventually, and it would call that the upper site. So the little cabin that was in the 40s is down on the, I think, was referred to as the back end of the property. But my parents had plans to build a second home on the upper end where that upper access was. Well, my mom developed melanoma cancer when I was in high school, and unfortunately that dream never became a reality. But the reason that that trailer is there, she ended up passing away when I was my junior year of high school. But the reason that trailer is up there at that upper part of the property, that was sort of a temporary trailer that my father bought from the Forest Service that was going to store materials. And that's why there are quite a few materials, lovingly referred to as junk. And I agree, it definitely is not the vision that we would like to see for the property. But the reason that there are a lot of materials and things stored on the property was that the plan was to build a home site there. And I think my father still is very much actively and dreaming. I think he recently applied for a well permit or did some active research into putting a home site there. And he's always spoken about the possibility of building something like a duplex where he could use part of it for himself and open up the other part to employee housing. So I think when we're talking about land use, we really have to consider that the vision for the property is that it's to be residential. It's not, it's, you know, in its current status of storing some junk is really not the ultimate vision our family has for the property. When I got a little older and my uncle retired and moved to Dumont and worked for a number of years under Nancy Hale at the Telluride Historical Society managing the Hamel House, and it has a very fond relationship with Nancy Hale. My organization, True North Youth Program, is closely associated with Tom Hale because some of the founders of my program in our area worked with Tom Hale when he was county commissioner here in San Miguel County. And Tom used to go fishing on the property. He used to use both those access roads to access our property and trout fish. And it was one of his favorite places in the whole Georgetown area. So if that tells you something, you know, the former town manager on his lunch break, or, you know, when he needed to get away for a little peace and respite, you know, that was the place he chose, 5 minutes away from town, to come, you know, enjoy the natural beauty and the recreation that is so special. And that's the reason we all love Georgetown. And so, you know, when we speak of visual impact, you know, it will visually impact that, even if there are a few scattered residential homes in the area. And I think the eventual purpose that our family would like to see is residential. But even so, if right now it just remains a recreational property, you know, putting an industrial storage site there will absolutely impact the land use of people who are going there for enjoyment. We actually have a scholarship right now in Tom Hale's honor through the True North Youth Program, which I'm the director of. So I feel like, you know, our family, the Russell family, has always been longtime friends of Georgetown. If we were to have ever realized the dream of building a residential property there, you know, if life had not taken that dream and kind of pushed it to the side, we would be residing there. And I think if we were residing there, if that was our primary residence, I don't think that the town would feel that they could come in and sort of change their access and make it a industrial storage. And it certainly wouldn't be a good neighbor thing to do to anyone who was residing there full time. I think that the reason that town feels that it's sort of an allowable purpose is because we're not residing there full time. But certainly that is the intention long term. We would love to contribute to the workforce housing of the community by, you know, creating a residence for us, as well as if we're ever able to create an additional, I think we're able to create 2 dwelling units. So, you know, the longtime vision and intention for that property is to make it residential. And, you know, I guess, let's see, I just have a couple more notes. I would like to speak to, I didn't fully understand who determined the wetland, but I think it is important to really have whoever, the professional agency that determines that. I would advocate that be done, that that process be followed so that there is a professional documentation of whether or not this is wetlands. I know that after the dam broke in the 1950s, my grandmother was solely responsible for coming down to that property and planting a lot of evergreens and pine trees and creating a really nice habitat. And so whether or not the water flows naturally or has been brought in through some alterations, there is a huge wildlife, diversity of wildlife. Besides the fishing, we've spotted moose, deer, elk, beaver, all kinds of critters. So, you know, it is a really diverse habitat. And as far as the tenant who's referred to, I just want to speak to the fact that I also agree that that's an eyesore. I would love to see that change, and I don't think that it's acceptable the way that that individual has placed their belongings there. The thing is that historically, we, you know, because we're not there full time, historically our property has been abused and misused by trespassers. And there's a long history of coming back up to the property in the springtime and finding somebody living, a stranger living there. And it's actually become scary a few times. You know, it's become a little bit of a safety and security issue, especially for me coming up there, you know, a single female driving up to our property alone and finding a total stranger camped out or living in our cabin or living in the trailer. And it was to the point where I didn't feel comfortable or safe coming to our own family property. So, you know, I think my father had some nice foresight in allowing a family friend's son, Justin, who I grew up with, who's about my age. And I think Justin has been able to use the property. Maybe I can attest, he absolutely is not a tenant. There's no financial exchange between the two of them. Justin has permission to use the property and to stay there. I don't think he's allowed to actually reside there. As far as I know, he resides with his father, who is physically challenged and needs quite a lot of care, probably wouldn't be able to get by without Justin's help. So I'm pretty sure Justin lives most of the time with his father, but he has parked, you know, his RV there, and it is unsightly. But, you know, for me as a part-time person who likes to use the property, it certainly feels a lot safer to show up and know that Justin is keeping an eye on the place and helping my father out with a few projects here and there. And, you know, certainly long-term, I wouldn't anticipate that the junk stay in its state. I think, you know, there's even been the suggestion of putting into conservation easement if it doesn't turn residential. But certainly, you know, the family has big plans to improve the property, beautify it, make use of it in a residential way, and also to continue to share it with the people, you know, who have always used and enjoyed it, which is our friends and residents, fellow residents in Georgetown. I have a number of friends who live in Georgetown who also really enjoy coming down to the property and fishing and walking their dogs. And, you know, it just feels a little bit like a slap in the face. I just feel like this is not something that you would do to a friend. And I certainly consider Georgetown and to be like a family friend. And I have a lot of friends there. And I guess I'm just disappointed. And I feel like maybe there's been a little bit of a disagreement, you know, toward my dad, which I understand, you know, things may have gotten heated, but it feels a little bit like a power struggle instead of a collaboration. And going forward, I would really like to see more of a collaboration and a friendship between Russell family and the property in the town of Georgetown, because that's what it's always been for the last 80 years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Other comments? Other comments?
Oh, well, I have just a presentation
Okay.
of sorts. It's not really well prepared, but there are a lot of things I'd like to get to.
Okay.
And guess I don't know, I'm not really sure where to start. I guess I'll start with some of the things that Rick said here, because I think you're misunderstanding some things, frankly. And the first thing, I guess, is that you're saying I have a tenant down there. If that's the case, it's unknown to me. Who was that person who said he's living there?
You actually introduced me to him, and he told me that he lived in the.
Oh, okay, well, that's, yeah, how long ago was that?
You said it to me last year,
Yeah,
when we talked about it.
I thought you were talking
And
about,
then just recently, I talked to him, and he confirmed that he still lives there.
well, that doesn't make sense because he doesn't live there. He
Well,
hasn't lived there for some
he
time.
confirmed to me that he lives in the trailer,
Well,
or the RV.
every time I've been
And
down there,
you
there's been
introduced
lock
me
on
to
the
him
door.
last year.
I know, I remember that. Every time I've been down there lately, there's been a lock on the door. He knows he's not supposed to be living there because I told him that after the county told me that's illegal. I told him he can't live there anymore. He had been there with.
Well, he
his woman.
lives there. I've taken pictures of him being there. He's
Okay, well,
confirmed that he lives there.
Okay, we'll have to deal with that if that's the case, because to my knowledge, that's not the case. I'll deal with it if it is. Okay. Can I ask who was on the site visit? Two of you?
Us three.
Three of you?
Yes.
Okay. And, so you walked the road, I presume, pretty much?
Yeah, we looked at the entrance towards the RV, and then we walked down the road to the site where it's proposed for the millings to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we walked down the outer road, came back up, and walked down to the, that's proposed site.
Okay.
We saw the culvert under the road, we saw the creek, we saw the lake, we saw the entrance to your own interest to your own property. We saw the entrance to the town property, we saw the proposed site for the millings.
Okay, you asked about the culvert under the road a little while ago. That was put in, I don't remember what year it was, when last time the road was improved. Up until then, what was under the road was the last remaining piece of the penstock from the J.J. White power plant. The foundation, remnants of the foundation of which are on my property just off that road that we're discussing. You may have noticed it or you may not have, it's pretty overgrown now. But in some older pictures, it's very visible. So anyway, I informed county, and they were rebuilding the road there of my water right, which traverses through that penstock, which was just a rusty old bent pipe. And so they replaced the old pipe with the new plastic. And, okay, might as well go to the junk. Yeah, I think it bothers me more than anybody here. I'm sure it does. Hate seeing it every time I go down there. And some of it's mine, some of it's not, but anyway, it's on its way out as expeditiously as we can get it done. The junk is, not all, some of it's building materials. It may look like junk now. That's going to stick around a while, but the tires, and the RV, and that kind of stuff is on its way out. And the Taurus that you saw in the picture there, all that stuff is going. So, so I don't have a tenant in the RV. If somebody's staying there, it's without permission. And Justin knows he's not supposed to be there. I don't think he is. I don't know when he last told you he was, but he's not there now to my knowledge. Okay, there was talk about whether or not it's a wetland and whether trees will be disturbed. I'd like to pull up my exhibit here, which it's kind of hard to show it to everybody, but I'll do what I can. My handy pointer here also serves as a tent stake. So this is the city outline here. is the outline of the Russell property. It comes up along this line, which is the shared boundary between the Russell property and Georgetown site, shown by these dashed green line here. I refer to it as Lot 9 because that's what the BLM called it.
That's fine, you just keep rotating yourself and everybody can see.
Yeah. And so this is Lot 9.
Town property.
And town property, formerly BLM property, and just for what it's worth, BLM did approve me as purchaser of the property back in the 1980s. BLM did not give it directly to the town of Georgetown. That was done through an act of Congress, and I wasn't involved with that. But anyway, Lot 9 ends down here. I just sketched approximately where that line is. This is the highway right-of-way line here. This is the west line of the Mills Placer Plain, of which Russell property is a part.
If you back up just a little bit every time you say something, both sides can see it.
Okay.
But when you stand in front of it, they can't see it.
Right,
You know,
okay.
So just face toward her.
Yep, so again, here's,
Sir, if you face toward, you stand back
I can
and
see it
face
good.
toward
You're
her,
good.
Okay.
everybody can see it.
okay,
There you go. Perfect.
okay,
Perfect.
okay, so here's Lot 9, town property, and I kind of colored in with brown the access road to the Russell property, the last 200 feet of which is on the Russell property. The first, I don't know, 500 or 600 feet is on town property. But you can see that it pretty well bisects that thin triangle of land there. And it becomes really thin down here toward the point where these lines intersect, of course. Virtually unusable for your purposes down there. So what the town's talking about is totally reworking this area up here. And I don't know if you can see, but I drew this a long time ago, but I sketched in the Aspen and Cottonwood Road here. And I don't know how you can say that you can put the road over by this line without destroying a lot of trees. There are a lot of trees in there.
We said we would not remove trees. That was a condition.
And more recently, you showed me a picture that shows the plan to move the road over to this line.
Nope, the other side.
Yeah, you're right, the other side, I'm upside down.
Try to move it as close as we can.
And there are a lot of trees in there.
We would not.
And that is
trees.
why we had, well, I'll get back to that. I brought with me a copy of the note that I sent you regarding our meeting and our handshake agreement. And with your permission, I'd like to enter that into the record.
You can enter whatever until we came up with it. This is what the plan is. So whatever we plan supersedes any agreement, anything that you were trying to manipulate me with.
Well, I didn't feel I was trying to manipulate you. I thought we had a productive meeting, but I'm sorry you're characterizing it that way. In any case, I would like to enter the notes from that meeting into the record because we did talk about it. We stood on the ground and talked about it. And I think that the agreements we made at the time made sense, standing on the ground, looking at the terrain and the water and the trees. And I think that you backed off a little bit on that, but maybe you couldn't help it because
Rick, can I make a suggestion? Just as we told the gentleman, yes, he could not interrupt. We may not interrupt him. This is his time to testify. And I observed that number 6 on our list here is the applicant to respond to any questions raised by the public. And that would be the place. I understand that there's disagreement, but we need to play it fair both ways.
Will do.
Okay, so I'd like to just read the email and read through the things that we agreed on. It's true, it's probably not legally binding, but it was a handshake agreement, and I think that counts for something around here. So the email just says, "Good morning, Rick. Attached is a document I prepared to summarize our meeting. Please inform me of any revisions or additions you think are appropriate. Perhaps this can serve as a basis of a memorandum of understanding between me and the town of Georgetown." And then I called you a couple of days after I sent this and asked, and you seemed to be in agreement with the things that I had listed on the attached sheet at the time, as representative of our agreement. So I have a couple extra copies. Should I just hand them out here?
Sure, can you read through the attached sheet?
Yes, I'm about to do
Oh,
that.
sure.
I'm about to do that, but I'm just saying I'll pass out a couple of extra copies of
Pass
this.
them out, they can hand them around as you speak.
I'll give you. I'll read from the other one.
Is that the entirety of the document?
I'm
I
about
think
to
he's gonna
read
read the attached sheet.
Okay.
This is the attachment. Hello, Rick. Thank you for our meeting this past Friday, June 24th, 2 p.m. on site to discuss the access road to my property, which bisects government lot 9, now owned by the town of Georgetown. Following are my recollections as to the issues we discussed and agreements reached. You indicated that the town of Georgetown wants to put the site to use, possibly by the Road and Bridge Department. Proposed uses are to stockpile millings or build a shop on the site. I pointed out that in addition to the road, I have a water right that crosses lot 9. I showed you the location of the property line between my land, part of the Mills Placer, and lot 9. You said that the town would utilize only the upper southwesterly part of lot 9 on the west side of the road, where it is possible to grade out a usable level space. I want to go back to my exhibit here, because this is important. So, at the time, what Rick said was they would only use this portion up here. There are some trees up there, but it's not like the grove of aspen and willows down here, which I'm sure you're aware of, having walked the road. So on the right side of the road, as you walk down, it's like a whole different environment from the left side. It's much more riparian. That's where this looks like that. That's where this culvert comes across the road, and where this manipulated channel forms a pond here, and a series of small ponds going on down the hill, which are still in the process of development. Yeah, it's manipulated. This used to just be an occasional puddle, whatever, wet, swamp once in a while during high water. So I've filled up the dam here a little bit and dug it out a little and made a pond out of it. And wildlife uses it. And wildlife uses lot 9 too.
There's fish in this pond?
Most of the time, yeah. I'm trying to get it where they can survive the winter in there. That's the challenge. Anyway, lot 9 here is not just a useless empty piece of land. Obviously, the access road is there, the water right comes through on lot 9. And in fact, up above here where I've not shown anything, this is a seasonal marsh area. So I would consider that a wetland. Maybe a small one, maybe a seasonal one, but it's a wetland. And ducks use it sometimes. Okay, so that's my comment on the trees and that part of our agreement. Let's see. And where is it? So, that was all based on Rick saying the town would utilize only the upper southwesterly part of lot 9. And I think what you probably have done in the study of the situation is realize that lot 9 isn't wide enough just on that one side of the road, and that's why you decided to move it over. It is a skinny piece of land, and it's also not what I would call steep land, but I would say steeply sloping. So it's going to take some significant earthwork. You guys who walk the road know this. It's going to take significant earthwork to make a flat place there to store millings. And I just want to say this, as far as storage of millings goes, I think it's safer environmentally, and it's better aesthetically to store asphalt millings around the edges of an asphalt parking lot rather than on the edges of a wetland. I think that this proposed use is, in fact, not in compliance with the zoning there, Parks and Recreation zoning. I think that it's a hazardous situation for the environment, and it's destructive of the local view shed. And it threatens my access to my property and my water right. So,
Do we have any?
so moving on, there was more to this on-site agreement. I didn't mean to get totally distracted there. So moving on from where it's going to be, you assured me that the town will observe all appropriate procedures to protect the environment. You assured me that the town will not contest my right of access. I mentioned my ongoing efforts to control invasive weeds on and around Lot 9. I also mentioned that my family and I have picked up trash, planted trees, and acted as caretakers for the site since 1949. I told you that I did not believe I was properly notified of either the 1993 Land Transfer Act or of the town's annexation of Lot 9. We agreed that the gate is best left at the present location. We agreed that the town and I can share a lock. And you said that I will be notified in advance so that I can attend meetings pertinent to these issues. For your attention to this issue.
Is there any more audience comment?
I believe we do. Vivian is asking if she can ask a question.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can go ahead, Vivian.
Okay. Are there other sites being considered for this purpose? I know the town obviously needs to find a solution. Are there other locations being considered?
I don't know if you heard it, but he said no.
Are there other possible locations that could be considered?
No.
So this is the only, it's this or nothing. There's no alternate location for the town's needs.
That's correct.
If this were a residential site, if someone were actually residing there, would this be acceptable under the town's rules and land use planning?
That we don't have regulations that would be against this. This is not our property. The town's property is zoned not residential. And so what we're asking for is an appropriate use under special use permit. So there's no restriction that the town has in order to put this, make a storage site out of it.
So you're saying, well, I'm asking, for example, like if down the road, let's say this transaction or this doesn't take place now, but down the road, I'm envisioning if the town will obviously still continue to own this piece of land, and if down the road there is a residential home put on the property, does that change the way that the town would consider using their parcel that's adjoining?
The answer is no, again, because we're not basing on a future potential use. We base on what is now, what is existing, what is allowed right now. The property that is adjacent to this property is wetlands. It is flooded, including all the structures that you mentioned earlier. They are underwater. And so that is not a residential area. In fact, it's probably in a floodplain or floodway area, which would be requiring LOMAR or CLOMAR license from FEMA in order to build. The likelihood of this being a residential area is very, very, very unlikely.
You're talking about my land?
Your property.
You're not talking about lot 9, you're talking about my
Lot 9 is not a residential area. It would never be able to be allowed to be a residential area. From the area that's adjacent, that area is a wetland. That area has water, either structures or you have to walk on boards to get to it.
To get where?
To get to the back end of your property. We had to walk on boards.
Okay, you're confusing me. You're talking about down at the end of the road then.
Yeah, but I think that the eventual home site that we've talked about is not down where you're talking about in the wetland. It's up where the little trailer is right next to the Alvarado Road. Is that considered a wetlands?
No, it's not.
And if that's not considered wetlands, then our property is not considered wetlands.
It's not considered wetlands, no, it's right on top of my wetland. Or I can't say it's not considered,
And I would agree
I'm
with
not the authority, I'm just saying it doesn't look like wetland at least on the upper side of the road. On the right-hand side of the road going down, yeah, I say it's wetland.
Can I ask something? If
Yeah,
this proposed,
Public testimony, you can ask questions of the public.
Answer.
I also ask questions of him.
Sure, go ahead.
If this proposed lot is turned into a site to store these asphalt millings, what's to say that the water from rain, we've had a lot of rain this year, that could happen again next year, say that's there, the runoff could potentially go into these wetlands you're talking about that are on the other end of the property.
Absolutely.
Well, he says that, however, I did reach out to the EPA and the CDPH chief, and they gave me guidelines that I submitted to you to show that
I saw that.
that would not happen. We would contain that area so that there's no runoff into that.
Well, I'm not sure, has anybody from the EPA or the Corps of Engineers or whoever,
Have they walked?
have they looked at this place?
I submitted our survey plat, I submitted the pictures that I took, and I submitted everything that I gave to this, I submitted to them, and that was their response.
Would it be possible to get the contact to note so that we can all, like the person who you're working with, which office, what the name and the contact is of the environmental?
Okay. Yeah, I think you gave me the paperwork, I could probably contact that person.
Can I ask another question? What specific materials are being proposed to be stored there? What's the name of the material?
Asphalt millings, crushed gravel, crusher runs, probably crusher fines, those road-based material.
What's the technical term for the asphalt?
RAP, asphalt millings.
Okay. And then, sorry for my ignorance, what is the DRC that keeps being referred to? The DRC acronym, what does that mean?
Design Review Commission.
Okay. Okay, and then, so I guess I'm a little confused about that whole access piece. So you're saying there's a potential that if this passes, that it would block access to the back part of the property? Is that correct? That the road would actually be physically blocked?
No, that's not in the report, that's never been mentioned. We are wanting to allow Mr. Graham to have access. However, it will be addressed through the county to not allow access for occupation for someone to live there.
Oh, absolutely, as it should be. Yeah, okay. And then under the adverse effects, what about the decrease in property value? So, if besides the view shed, could we please list decrease in the property value as one of the adverse effects that would take place were there to be an industrial storage area?
I don't think it can be because it currently has industrial storage right now on the adjacent property. So I think you can't argue that it's gonna devalue property values because the property is already devalued. The town's property would not devalue it more. I think it's a zero-sum game.
What's the industrial storage right now that's adjacent?
What's the industrial storage you're referring to?
Tires, there's junk, there's
Well, I've
building
addressed that.
materials
It's
that
not-
you mentioned.
It's not long-term storage, I've already addressed that.
Well, it's been there for 40 years.
No, that's not true, it's been there for less than a year, actually.
No, it's been
I'm
there.
sorry,
We can be in a disagreement, that's fine, but as long as I've been here, and then when I've communicated and asked fellow staff members, it's been like that forever.
I'd have to say, every time I've driven down that road for the last 3 years, there's been junk in that driveway.
you're talking down.
The junk may change around because, yeah, there's a process, there's some process of going on of what junk is there. But, and it may shift around depending on projects. But I have a question also.
I just want to address something that you had already asked about too, but I know it's a highly emotional situation about property and land, but I don't think there can be an argument about Georgetown's prices decreasing in the area whatsoever. So I understand that you're talking about the potential decrease in property value by moving the millings, but I don't see how the millings moving from one location to another is gonna decrease the property value of lot 9, which is what we are referring to, not the potential.
I guess we're talking about the property value of our land, not your land.
Well, if I can make a suggestion on procedure, we've got kind of a round robin conversation going.
Right.
And then, at some point, that's fine, but at some point, you've got a set of procedures here and sort of an order of events that you march through, and at some point, you get a decision made. And I'm not trying to hurry it along, but I'm trying to suggest organization. The sheet that's in front of you is what is our roadmap, and we're off of the roadmap.
Yep. I greatly appreciate both sides of the story.
I'm not giving you a hard time.
Saying their part, but yes, I agree. Let's move
At some
forward.
point, you want to make
Okay, I
sure
have one more question. What's the frequency that the town would be accessing the materials? So,
Wait, can you just hold up for a minute? Thanks. Let's remember that the way this works is, you hear from the applicant, which is the town, then you hear from the public, which is the Russells, questions of each of them, then you hear from the applicant again, kind of rebuttal, and then there's, the hearing gets closed and we're done hearing from everybody, and the commission gets to just talk among itself. I want to make sure the applicant has their full shot, and I want to make sure the Russells have their full shot. I know Vivian's got another couple questions. The spot we're in right now is the Russells presenting and any questions the commission might have of the Russells. The applicant here on the town might have a rebuttal to that, but they're going to save that until number 6 on the list. So what I'm trying to get you to do is the Q&A back and forth is, if you have a concern about property values, probably the way to say it isn't that true, Mr. Town, that the property value is going to decrease? You're going to get an answer from him that's not all that helpful.
Right.
Instead, I would, if I were you, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it'd be, here are our concerns. We think the property values will decrease. We think this, we think this. That'll get your concerns in front of the commission more effectively. And the same thing's true, I think, of the town. Rather than getting the Russells to say, when did you quit beating your dog? They're never gonna do that. Neither side, will. So I'm just asking that we kind of respect the order of events here. We're still here in the Russells. That's the spot we're in right now, and I wanna make sure they say everything they got to say, and when they're done, they will say to us, okay, now we're done. So, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl.
Yeah. What more do you have, though? Vivian had a few more points, I think, she wanted to make.
Sure, thank you for that. Can you please remind me your name?
It's Jerry.
Okay, I'm sorry, my acoustics are a little off, but yeah, I appreciate it being noted that I do have concerns about the property value being decreased for this industrial use, because I agree that it's not going to be that unsightly. I'm really not concerned with what people see from I-70 looking down, but I am concerned with the view shed for the surrounding neighbors. It was stated earlier that there are no permanent residents who would be viewing that, and I would like to argue that there are a number of permanent residents whose view shed would be disrupted by this. I can see from that spot along Alvarado Road, there are several homes, particularly that red home. I don't know who lives there right now, but there is a full-time permanent residence on the adjoining property right along Alvarado Road. And then there's the jeweler that lives up there, used to own the jewelry shop in town. Ken lives up there. I forget who else lives up there, but absolutely there are permanent residents in the neighborhood. And the other piece that I would like to point out is that it's not so much, the pile of materials that would be unsightly. And I agree with you that the pile of materials is no more unsightly than a pile of tires or a pile of building materials. And I do want to note it for the record that is not the long-term intention to have building materials and junk storage. I absolutely am very aware of optics. I live on my husband's a caretaker for a 110-acre historic farm, and we constantly are weeding and mowing, and her whole entire life is devoted to the optics of property. And so I do value that very much, and I do think that some of the junk and storage that's happened over the years, I ask for a little grace with that, because my dad's been dealing with that on his own. Like I said, our family kind of plans for the home were interrupted. So I do ask for a little grace from the town on that, and just to be noted that that's absolutely not the long-term intention for that property. We would love to have it come back to what it originally was, and that there are quite a lot of wildlife that would be affected by any kind of hazardous materials or any kind of chemicals that would leach out of that road base, which everybody knows there's tons of toxic chemicals that are used in road base and the antifreeze and all of that. So, I don't know who at the EPA was contacted, but I would very much advocate for somebody to set foot on the property and not just be emailed a report, but to be invited to set foot to do that impact study. And then back to my point though of the view shed and the property value decrease. I think the biggest issue is that there would be on a regular basis somebody coming in, getting road base, dropping off, getting, and everybody knows that if you've ever lived next to a construction project, it's a big disturbance. It's a big emotional disturbance, noise disturbance, having whatever vehicles and tractor trailers need to come in and drop off the materials as well as gather them and take them back out. So to me, it's much less about what the optics of a pile of materials would look like, but the quality of life impact that would have for the long term on the recreational usage that it currently is, and on the eventual hopeful residential usage down the road, as well as an environmental impact for the animals that call that home when there becomes a lot of noise and vehicles and things moving in and out of the property. That's going to have a major impact as well. I have one more question, I guess, statement. Mike originally had said that when he was hired as town manager, or sorry, excuse me, not Mike. I missed the name. Mr. Town Manager stated that he was hired to find a new space for material storage, and that he was tasked with that as a mission when he was hired. But then I'm hearing also saying that there have been no other properties considered for that. So I just would like to appeal that maybe some, you know, some other spaces or other places be considered, because I'm sure that, you know, there's a lot of open space all around, up and down the roadway, and it, you know, this might have been the first thing that came to mind, but, you know, I just think that maybe you could still consider looking at other options.
Okay, I still have 6 on here that the applicant and staff may respond.
That's
But
correct.
that's the end of their presentation.
Want to make sure there's no more from the Russells.
Oh, I've got a little more to go.
Okay, what I do want is, we get into the next thing, and you've got, there needs to be a time when you say, I'm done. Are you there yet?
Not quite.
Not quite, he says.
Okay. I guess I'd just like to point out that this property here is not, lot 9 is not going to waste by just being there. There is, in addition to my family's use of the property, which I've already mentioned, both our access and the waters the whole upper, that water right incidentally waters this whole Aspen and Willow Grove up, or Cottonwood Grove up in here, and this whole area through which it flows down here. So it's important to our property, at least locally, and to the local wildlife. And what I was going to say is I see deer frequently up here on lot 9, and I have a recent picture of a moose right about here, and reports of a mountain lion last fall right about here on the road, and reports of a bear that's coming across my property and actually across the highway and back again. And there's lots of smaller wildlife, of course, but anyway, it is used as, if nothing else, as a wildlife refuge. And I just also like to point out that for the last well over 70 years, my family's used this for access. It's only been in the last 20 years or so that I've established this access, and that's specifically for this upper area right in here. There's no way to get down here without crossing without crossing water. And it can be done, but it would be expensive, it would be messy. I don't want to do it. So anyway, yeah, this access up here, it's cluttered with stuff, but even when it's uncluttered, it is not intended to be accessed for the lower part of the property. Incidentally, I sketched in this blue line right here to just kind of give an idea of where the floodplain is. This whole area northerly of that blue line is basically floodplain. So it'd be great for conservation easement or something. I'm right now trying to manage the beavers that are mostly managing that area themselves. But if there's any building area, it's obviously above that line.
Okay.
And there is area above that line. We do have buildable ground. Incidentally, it's also zoned MR1 down here and planned development up here, for what it's worth.
Okay. Is there anything else, separate topics that you haven't broached yet that you'd like to raise?
I'm sure there are, but I probably won't think of them until we say goodbye.
There has to be an end at some point.
There has to be an end, yeah. I'll certainly take any questions.
Okay.
Decision made tonight? Is that the process now, that a decision is made this evening?
Possibly, but you'll just have to stay tuned. We haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody on staff or on the board who would like to ask questions to clarify anything to the applicant or
Well, it's really
present their own
kind of a
information?
rebuttal for
It
the
is,
applicant.
yeah,
So I think that'd be Rick to respond to anything that he's now heard from the public before you close the
Okay.
testimony.
Yeah, I have a lot, and so I wanna make sure this board understands, what we've heard are a lot of potential concerns. They're not real concerns, they're potential hypothetical concerns based on speculation and fear. It's normal when people freak out about any kind of major change to things. I just wanna reiterate, this is town-owned property. This is not Mr. Russell's property. This is not just lot 9. It's easy to say that because of the emotional connection to this. This is town-owned property. I've spent a year looking at this. This has not been something that we're flippantly saying, we've got our target on this piece of property, and we're gonna do whatever we want because it's our property. We've taken a year to look at this. We've looked at lots of other pieces of property. And I'll give you examples. We went to the Road and Bridge yard that's across the interstate. It's just too small to store road-based material. We have some road-based material, but it's just too small. We don't have that. So then we look at what else does the town own? Well, we own a lot of property to the west of Argentine, all the way down, and it's zoned commercial, gateway commercial. That is prime real estate that the town is preserving in order to develop that for the best interest of the town. Once you lose commercial, you can't get it back, and we've talked about that in other things. So we've looked at that. The town also owns 3 parcels in Millsite subdivision. The Millsite. Can you imagine what they would say if we made, the 3 lots into storage right there in front of all the condos that are right there? I can legitimately see a concern for that, to use that. So then we own property that.
Wouldn't it be a similar concern as their?
Well, no, the answer is no, because there's no housing around this area. There's dense trees that protect the view from seeing it from other places. So even as it was mentioned further down of a red house, that's not in the line of view. Where we're gonna be reporting at the very south end of our property, where there's trees all around it, you can't see it. I mean, if you look down walking through there, it's basically like a narrow line of trees, that block the view. So you're not gonna see the millings from that direction of north. You're not gonna see it if he decides to build on the east side of his property on Alvarado. That's all protected. There's dense trees there, as he mentioned, cottonwoods and aspens. It's gonna be out of visual sight. You can't see that from that corner. And so that addresses that. So then I look about, what about the other piece of property that the town owns? And that is right behind the Family Dollar. That's on Argentine as well. Well, that's also zoned for gateway commercial. Can you imagine what that would be like in the commercial area, having another milling storage, where that's not the best use for the town? We're trying to develop that. So we're trying to put this at the end of our property that's out of sight. It's our town property, it's not residential. It's actually the most appropriate space. When we look at the town-owned properties, we've taken a lot of thought through this. Mr. Graham and I have talked about this. The reason why the tone has changed is because of the manipulation to the DRC. Once that happened, the gloves have been taken off. He was not willing to work with us now as partners and as good neighbors. At this point, he's adversarial to the town. And so now it's like, how do we work together in a relationship like this? Well, it's very difficult. Because now he's trying to dictate the terms of how we should use our property. And that's a hard challenge. We have addressed the concerns that we would not be cutting down trees. We have addressed that we are not in wetlands, because he's already said that. Our property actually slopes up and away from that. And it would not take a lot of clearing from the area that we're talking about. We're talking about minimal. We're just trying to have an area that we can store some millings, store the most we can. The remaining stuff we're gonna probably reuse in order to maintain our roads. So we're talking about a small space. We don't have a lot of millings in the first place. We've been using them over and over, but we're looking for a place that we can now, and I want to reiterate why. It's because the town wants to reclaim that area, that's you see it, there's a sign that tells you what the area is. It's an event parking space. And the town uses that as a temporary site until they can find a permanent location or more long-term temporary, if that's what it was. We will most likely, run out of our millings at some point. And, is the point that we'll continue to have a stockpile? Who knows? That's a hypothetical thing that we're not looking at. We're looking at a storage site right now. We're not looking at potential or future. And so, I understand, site visuals, it's actually a worse visual site where it is currently located, but we've got zero complaints about that. It's the same, we have heavy rain there, but no one seems to complain about heavy rain on the mill site right now. It's like, it's in the same proximity to where the creek is, all the way down. And we're not getting complaints about it right
You
now.
also have a raised road blocking it from draining that way.
Okay, so there's still runoff. Water's gonna run to the least path of resistance, and it's gonna go through culverts, it's gonna go through anyways in order to get to the creek. But we're not seeing that. We're not seeing all this massive pollutants coming out of so all this is hypothetical fear that's coming out of this. This is wanting to address a situation that is reviewed. We've taken our time. This has not been raced. In fact, Mr. Russell and I have met multiple times in order to try to come up with a compromise. And, I look at the email that he submitted. Was there anything on there that I signed? If you look at the email, there was a discussion about it, but there was not a signed, hey, let me send this to Jerry Dahl to have a legal contract created out of this. This was a, let's talk about this. Can we come to terms? And even some of the things that he addressed in there are not accurate.
Okay, I think it seems to me that we've slid past the just rebuttal point, and.
Yeah,
I have a question.
I think it's fair to ask the applicant to wrap up, or if there are any questions, final questions of the.
Because we still have a chance for discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for Rick. And you said there's been no complaints from where it currently is. And you're saying that it's a small amount of millings. And like, what's wrong with it where it is where it is right now in a more condensed version, like taking a quarter of that lot where it gets parked on once a year and establishing a quarter of that lot for the millings and having a 3/4 of it in a nice area for parking.
And that's not what I was tasked to do. I was tasked to.
But that's just my question. What's wrong? What's wrong with the current situation with it being consolidated? And that's, in my mind, doing that would be like far less of a task than the proposed site.
So, and I hear your question. That's not what I was tasked when I came in.
Okay.
It was, we have to find another.
So there's no explanation other than that was not your assignment?
No, that's not true. It was not tasked. After clarifying with the Board of Selectmen, that area is going to be redeveloped. And so there are plans to put a fire station there. There's plans to put road and bridge shop there. There's plans to actually put a potential town hall there, but.
So it goes further than it just being a parking lot?
Correct. But in the meantime, the parking is so limited in Georgetown that they want to reclaim that so that we can use that as an events parking lot, the way it was appropriated.
Right, and I've been around Georgetown for a while, and this gets used maybe 4th of July weekend and 3 weekends in December. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
When else does it get used?
We had Christmas market.
Right,
Those are your two big ones.
those are
You have your two big ones, 4th of July, and then
and
you
the Christmas
have,
market.
but then we have smaller events that are down by Cabin Creek that they need overflow. We have various car clubs that come in that need space in order to have their cars parked, for their parades and stuff like that, so we allow them to do that. There are other groups that want to use that, but we don't allow that. Or equipment that needs to be parked temporarily, so it's an event parking space that we have preserved for that. If not, we have no other event parking place.
Okay, I'd like to close the public hearing.
I have a question.
But we still have time for
Okay.
discussion within the
With us,
commission.
yeah.
Okay, so I would like to close the public hearing and ask for commission discussion, which we are already into. And I thank you both for being here and talking to us about this. And you know, from a legal point of view, a lot of the things you said don't mean a lot, but they do. I mean, since we appreciate our town and its surroundings, we appreciate hearing from you. And we'll talk it out. So, I would like to ask for commission discussion, which we are already into.
Yeah, I guess I kind of tag along, the things that I wrote down as people were discussing, it's just that, so, the petition, I think, is being very needed. I actually see the importance of it, you know, and being the planning commission and reading through the book, we're trying to prepare Georgetown for what's coming, you know, and that's what my interpretation of this whole entire thing is. So I anticipate Georgetown growing and just being a part of the citizenship too. I do see it as event parking if it wasn't for ground millings. Might there be a better location? That's not what's on the table right now. So right here, right now, I think it is a very important and good presentation to put it there. And I would also like to say it is a very valiant challenge, and I appreciate and respect standing up to community leaders in order to come and stand here and be able to say your part as well. I mean, because it is important to be able to hear it, but as it comes down to it, I agree with Kathleen as well. We have to see past the emotion and we have to look at what's happening here. And I'm saying emotion on both sides. So that's, I guess, my discussion from my point of view.
Jake, you want to say something?
In Exhibit F, your proposed road does go through an aspen stand here, and that was a concern of mine, was cutting down any trees. When we walked the property yesterday, I told you that was a concern of mine, and I really don't wanna have to cut down any trees on that property, even though it is town's property. At the end of the day, it's not left up to me, but that proposed road does go through an aspen stand right there. And when we were walking that road, there was a couple of trees that had already been cut down. By whom, I don't know, that's besides the point. But if that road could stay here, because literally there's no way to get through there without cutting down those trees. There's brush over here, but this is all aspens at the front entrance to the road on the right-hand side. That's my only concern at this moment.
Well, Ed, you have something to add?
No, I said some stuff earlier.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, Doug?
No.
Let me suggest that in this discussion, I would think that we can, we have to take up this particular issue as it came to us. But I think, again, we can talk about maybe goals or conditions for some of the work that seems to be, needs to be considered.
Yeah, you're doing the right thing by kind of going around the room, or going around the commission to see where people are. And when you've kind of done that a little bit, at some point, to focus your discussion, you'll take a motion, just like we did for the earlier one. And that's partly my job, is to help you structure motions, and I'm studying out of structure motions. So there will be a form of an approval, and there will be a form of a denial, and I can suggest those, and somebody can pick one, and then you can debate that, and if it passes, great, if it doesn't, the other one gets moved, and we see if that passes.
Okay,
So,
so Doug, did you wanna add anything?
That's Alex.
that's out.
I'm done. That's Alex, but that's okay. That's okay.
No worries. I've got a cheat sheet here. No worries. 'Cause I wasn't sure either.
I don't, not anything else than like what I asked, like, and it seemed easier in my, like, I understand the, future plans of having it be a firehouse or whatever it may be.
Right.
But it kind of like seems to me that it would be easier to like consolidate that stuff, right, where it is.
Where it is right now.
Currently, yeah, like it's a huge space where, but,
Okay.
Doesn't the town already have a firehouse?
Yeah.
Oh, do we need a second one?
No, then we would repurpose it.
Well,
and like, and whatever it may be, but like, it is that with the discussion of it as it's being, you know, years down the line, and this is a potential of these millings running out, and the space there that it is, it seems, and from my mind, it would be easier to keep it there in a consolidated form. That's how I feel about it.
Does the town have drawn up plans for the things you were speaking of that are gonna be going there in the future?
I wanna remind our board what we're talking about. The task was to remove the millings for event parking,
Right,
not for future use.
yeah,
And I don't wanna live in the hypothetical,
sure,
because that's not what we're here for. We're here to reclaim for event parking, and that's what the need is.
yeah,
And to find a long-term storage place for millings. That was never designed to be a milling site. And so that's, I wanna reiterate, we don't have plans because it's hypothetical, and we're not there. And so it's an event parking space.
So Jerry, what are our options then? We can table it, we can motion to pass it or motion to deny it, correct?
and does that be unanimous, or like, how does that?
It's a majority of the quorum, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 3 votes passes the motion. It's Doug that I stole my thunder about the 3 doors, you know, I'm a 3 doors guy. So as usual, you do have 3 choices. You can move to approve it with or without conditions. You can move to deny it and indicate some reasons for that, because the code does say you need to articulate your reasons. Although those kind of emanate from what you just now said, which is helpful no matter which way a motion goes. Or you can continue it to another meeting. Typically, continuances are when there's really a lot of evidence that you haven't heard yet. And I recognize there's always questions. On this one, I predict there will always be questions forever, won't there? So, you know, at some point you gotta decide, because, you know, everyone's not gonna say, you know, I have no further questions, because that won't happen. But it's your judgment around that. From the perspective of the motions themselves, if you were to approve, you'd probably want to address, I can help you with this is about the water right and the access to the adjacent property owner, probably at the town's sole discretion, rather than, I don't think you can require that, but you could certainly address the access and the water right, and I could, if you go down that motion, I can tell you how to, I can make a suggestion. If the motion is to deny, you would want to articulate the key things that drove you to say that. The one thing I guess I'd encourage you is, this is an application for a special use permit for lot 9. This is not an application to fix and have a game plan into the future for the present site. That's the reason, no question, it was absolutely fair. The applicant say, this is why we're doing this. But the problem you're solving isn't that, it's, you've got an application in front of you, and that's the one yet.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Of Rick. If at this point we were to approve this, could you assure us that for the interim time, you would keep the materials we'd like to store north of the access road that goes through parcel 9?
Yeah.
Then I'm,
Also, not cutting down any trees.
well, I don't know that we could say cut down any trees, but I mean, I agree with the idea of trying to keep them there both as a barrier, as well as just for the way the town looks.
And just to reiterate, if that's the case, the condition to be on the, west, keep it on the west side of the dirt road that goes down.
Right,
Then we have to clear it to maximize that.
that's right.
There's no big trees in that area. We would clear it out to maximize.
That's not the area I'm talking about. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the area to the east.
We would not touch that then.
Okay, well,
This is as an interim,
Correct.
right,
I would agree with that.
recognizing that you might have to come back at a later date for an actual proposal that maybe requires the road to be moved.
Well,
Eventually, the access road.
can I ask a question to Jerry?
Yeah.
Is that, why would I have to come back for approval to move a road that's on our property?
Well, this is special, we're in special use permit land.
Yeah.
In special use permit land, any condition that's reasonable can be imposed, just like there were conditions on the prior application. This isn't use by right, this is special use land that we're in, and so conditions can be imposed. What I guess I'd suggest is, you close the public hearing.
Yes,
So we're really not negotiating conditions with the applicant,
that's correct.
really. And so,
It's true, but I was asking as a general town
yeah,
policy for a
yeah.
period of time.
But at some point, the hearing is brutally open again. And you're doing
No, I'm not trying to do that, I'm just
Okay.
trying to say, can we resolve the use for the, I don't wanna put the time period down, for the next year or so, so that you can solve your other problem down where the public parking needs to go. And I know that's necessary, just by following that one particular request.
I'm not sure I understand.
My request was that the stuff that you're about to move be placed west of the present access road.
I have no problem with that.
So do you consider that a condition that is?
Well, you have the right to impose that condition. I can't tell you you don't have the right, you absolutely have the right to, because this is a special use permit.
Right.
So you designed, it's its own little design animal.
Mhm.
If you're sort of ready to move into motion territory, because at some point you're gonna be, a motion to approve would be to approve the special use permit application of the town of Georgetown. Materials storage are on Argentine Street at the location noted, with the following conditions, and then you list them. Whoever
And then if
wants-
those conditions change at time, then somebody else, then it comes back?
Well, if you have conditions that say that the road has to stay in the current location, that's the condition of your permit. The road can't be moved until the applicant that has that permit, which is the town, comes
Right.
back and says, hello, I'm filing an application to amend my special use permit.
Okay,
Because the conditions you impose, otherwise, conditions, like that parking condition on the previous one, that's a condition.
Right.
yeah.
And the property owner there can't say, The commission said it's gotta be reviewed by the town attorney and approved, but we're not gonna do that. That was your condition, so they must do that or they don't get their building permit,
Yeah,
right? So the same thing is true here.
okay.
And it is also true that, you know, we're in special use land and it's special. So that's why you have condition, or that's why you have the right to impose condition. Those conditions need to be, you know, reasonable and have to, in my opinion, relate to, you know, your legitimate concerns about the application.
Yes.
So,
Can anybody introduce the condition, or only the chair?
oh,
Yeah,
anyone
you vote.
can,
Whoever
because
wants to make the motion.
maybe the way to do this, where you have multiple conditions that you're not sure everybody's gonna like or not like,
You might want to table it.
here's the trick that I advise. You take a motion to approve, we'll say, and that gets seconded.
Approve each condition?
Well, I'm getting there, stay with me. You take a motion to approve, that gets seconded, and then the chair says, any amendments?
Okay.
And Ed says, I'd like to amend it to add this condition, X, Y, Z. And then you vote on that condition to see if it gets hung on the Christmas tree, right? So the motion's the tree and the conditions are the ornaments. And that way you see whether the conditions rise or fall. Some of them may get on, some may not, but then when you're all done with that, and I'll help you.
I
When
mean,
you're all done with that, then you will have a fully decorated tree that you can go on.
I move to approve the condition
The application.
of the application of the special permit consideration for the town of Georgetown.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Are there any amendments to that motion?
I'd like to make an amendment, I can do that as a chair.
Sure.
right?
You
I'd like to make an amendment that the initial use of the site for moving road materials onto the site stay north, or west, pardon me, west of the existing access road.
Is there a second for that amended toward motion?
I second it.
Okay, that you can vote on, because you're not voting on the whole shooting match,
Right.
just deciding to put that ornament on the tree.
Right.
So everyone understand that motion? So all those in favor of that amendment?
Yes?
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that amendment goes on by a vote of 4-1. Jennifer's making notes here, so we're gonna kind of take it slow. Is there another amendment? I think there is.
That the current access road not be moved.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that. And not
Indefinitely?
like into eternity. We're just-
No. Just,
Well, if they wanna move it, they're gonna have to come back and amend the special use.
Well, okay,
That's the
Okay.
deal, remember?
okay,
My answer to your question,
okay.
same answer.
So, wouldn't that, like, doesn't that kind of fall under the first amendment?
no, the road not being moved would stop them from cutting down any of these trees here.
Yeah, I think he's right.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah. Was there a second to this
She
motion?
seconded it.
All in favor of that ornament on the tree?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Was that 4-1?
Wait, he didn't.
Yeah, he's correct.
So Doug opposed, and then it was 4.
Are there other amendments? No's? Okay, so what you now have is a motion to approve the special use permit from the town of Georgetown with 2 conditions. That the location of the existing access road not be changed, and that all material storage shall take place west of the existing access road. Everybody understand the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So that motion, Jen, passes 4-1 with, wait, you were an aye or an nay? You're against the motion?
Correct.
Okay, so it's 4 in favor with 1 against, am I right?
Correct.
Okay.
Got it, thank you.
I have a question, and I know you're looking at me like crap. Well, because part of my question is, we wanted to make a turnaround so that we can have a truck turn around. we can't change the road. And so I'm like, how are we gonna get a big truck in there in order to access this to deliver material?
Is this a semi truck or a dump truck?
It's whatever,
I mean, I feel like you can still make a turnaround.
you can't make it turn out the way it is right now. We already have road and bridge discussed it.
Procedurally, you can ask the commission to reconsider their previous motion. If we vote to reconsider it, then that takes us in a little time machine back to the point in time after which we put the 2 ornaments on the tree and before we voted on the main motion. And it's possible that if one commission member wants to put a 3rd ornament on the tree in the form of a turnaround is permitted on the existing access road not to exceed something that I'm no engineer and I'm not gonna say. And that gets, 3rd ornament gets on, then we're back. But
Would it be possible to go straight and make it a turnaround there without taking any of this out?
Yes.
Okay, I'm all for putting another ornament on the tree. Instead of having the road where it was previously suggested, having the turnaround right there. So you're not cutting down all of these aspens here. I mean, I would be willing to make that an amendment if anybody else is interested.
I'm not sure I understand where you're saying.
So you see where I think you're looking at the wrong, look at Exhibit F. This one, it'll show you where the proposed road is. And the reasoning behind my amendment to make the road not change was this aspen stand here.
I'm getting there. Oops, what happened to F? Oh, there we go.
So, the amendment I would be proposing is keeping the roundabout here, but not moving the road, so you don't impede on the aspen stand at the beginning of the service road. So the road would stay, but you would put a roundabout where the proposed roundabout is.
All the way up here?
Yep, so a truck could turn
The road
around.
would stay here and they just have a turnaround, so they could still go straight to.
Okay, and that was okay with road and bridge?
Yes.
They thought that was okay?
well, if we want to get to there, since you've done all your work, we have to go backwards.
Yes.
All right, and the way to go backwards would be, I suspect, it has to be a motion made by someone on the prevailing side, and then we'll score 1. So that, I think, would be Jake, since.
So I would make
my
a motion.
suggestion is that you need to make a motion to reconsider the previous motion, which was to approve the whole thing. And if that passes, then we've gotten in a time machine and we've gone back to the putting ornaments on the tree stage of things.
So but you're also asking, I mean, I
But
understand what
we
you're
gotta do
saying.
that first before we have your discussion, because if that doesn't pass, we're done, we're not talking about that.
I just want to clarify.
Okay.
So you're suggesting moving the road at the beginning of this?
No, keeping the road exactly the same, and then when you get to where the proposed roundabout is, keeping that putting the roundabout there, but you would be building on the other side of the road, which was,
I see.
one of the amendments I made was not to move the road.
Oh, but you just said we aren't moving the road, other than
We still
putting the
wouldn't be
roundabout.
moving, we still wouldn't be moving the road, but we would be allowing them to cut that roundabout in on the other side of the road.
Well, in order to have a discussion about it,
Yes, I
you're gonna
understand.
have to have some kind of motion.
So,
I'd like to make a motion to,
Reconsider the prior motion.
reconsider the prior motion.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
If you're, to vote on this, if you're voting in favor, it means you want to get back in the time machine to go back to the ornament setting phase.
Yeah.
So are you calling for the vote, Madam Chair?
I just want to make sure everybody's clear on it and that there's discussion on this particular.
Oh, yeah, all we're doing now is agreeing to go back to that
Yes,
stage. We're
that's
not- So, but I mean, have you called for a vote on this motion?
to make the motion, I just want to clarify the motion.
We will. we have to
But the
get.
motion isn't to add the ornament yet, the motion is to
Just
reconsider,
go back.
remember?
Okay.
Motion to reconsider, that's the motion that's on the table, it
Okay,
needs to get voted on, it
Okay.
hasn't been yet.
okay, all in favor?
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes, you're now back to the point prior to, so you had a pending motion to approve, and it would be appropriate to make a motion to add an additional condition.
I'd like to make a motion to add an additional condition amendment to the prior motion.
Okay, that would say what?
We still don't touch the access road, we just allow the town to make the roundabout in the suggested area.
So it would be a motion to add as a condition that a roundabout is permitted in the area shown on the exhibit.
On exhibit F, yes,
That can be marked.
it is
So
marked.
that then it becomes a part of the. So that's your motion to amend, that's the third one, is there a second to that motion?
My second, this is in order to help alleviate issues that the staff might endure, correct? I second that.
Okay. Madam Chair, discussion on the motion to add the
Any
ornament?
further discussion?
Yeah, so I just want to discuss from a planning commission thought or theory. I hope that we can not restrict. So on the first one, let's just say, right, on the first, and then one we touched on, we didn't restrict her after we just approved it. So we can either have a lot of control, or we can have the ability to trust the people that work with us and for us. So that's my discussion in this arena. So moving forward, I hope that we don't put so many amendments on that we can't operate.
Well, that's kind of why we're going back, so you can't operate.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Third ornament, this motion gets approved 5-0. So now you have a main motion which has 3 conditions,
Yes.
and you're familiar with those conditions, so
Yes.
you're back to the point in time where you are ready to vote on the main motion, which is the motion to approve now with 3 conditions.
That's correct.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the 3 conditions.
Actually, that motion was pending, so it's really just voting that motion, but that's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, so,
Forward.
Passes 4-1.
got that, but who seconded it?
I did. Oh, you did.
I did that third amendment.
Just this one we're doing again, okay, thank you. Got it.
That concludes your work on this application. That concludes the hearing.
So, thanks, Louise, for the-
And we are.
We have the last reading on the agenda.
Right, and I just, we also have approval in minutes, but the, so, I mean, it's, I'm probably the only person this affects. It's kind of getting late.
Does anybody want to say anything to the Zoom people? Do you guys, we're probably gonna move on to the next topic. Vivian and Mike.
Well, it's a public meeting, you're
No,
welcome to continue to listen, but we're done with this item, we're gonna move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, can we ask, when will this plan for the turnaround, which wasn't on the agenda, but when will that be, the survey for how this road is gonna be altered?
I'm sorry, what is the question you're asking?
It's done.
This turnaround that was just tacked on right at the end, when is that gonna be announced? Because that's
Turnaround is already part of the proposal, we just amended it, that's all.
I think she's asking when the town would want to create. that.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't have the answer.
I don't either.
Would we see some kind of plan for that, or when would we be notified of how that will affect the road?
Well, it's not subject to a future hearing. That's just a condition placed on the town's use of its own property. And the town would not be obligated to send out any kind of notice that it's establishing the turnaround. It just wouldn't be obligated to do that. If that's the question.
Are the selectmen still going to hear this case, or is this a done deal?
This is the final decision of the commission.
So how can we stay engaged in knowing what will happen on on adjacent property? How can we as concerned owners know what's gonna happen next?
Well, like anything else, you look at I can't give you legal advice, you are not my client. Like any member of the public, you look at the town's website, you look at its public meeting agendas and see what's on the agenda, you become an engaged citizen. You know as well as I do how that works, especially if you're in Uray County, a lot of engaged citizens down there. And so that's how you do it. I mean, that's all I can tell you.
See you later. Grant, you and I can have discussions later, if you'd like.
Call me anytime.
Let's move on. Shall we?
So I was asking, can we, I don't know that we can get through all of this training tonight, is that true?
It's your choice. I mean, it's your choice, you're the commission, you guys need to decide, I'm not the one to do that. I can do the training probably, I've done it in an hour, I've done it in a half an hour, it all kind of depends upon what amount of time you want to do it, and the questions you have, and kind of age you want to be, and how tired you are. I'm up for it. So 8 o'clock is like starting for me, but other people feel differently, and I'm at your disposal, I can come to another meeting, or I can stay for this one, it's up to you.
So, well, I'm all in favor of trying to get through it in a half an hour. I'm skeptical that we can do it, and maybe we just have to decide as we go along.
I think the 3 people that are gonna be, that are the people that are here probably are smart enough to do it in half an hour.
Okay?
So I'm all for it.
Yeah, let's proceed to the training, and it'll
Okay,
prepare us better in
fair enough.
future meetings.
Rick, do you need me for anything further?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I would just ask if I could use the restroom first.
Yep.
5-minute recess.
So you have to stay here.
5-minute recess. 5-minute recess.
You have a bottle of water, please.
Is there a bathroom downstairs?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only one downstairs.
It's locked, I'll be right there.
Oh, okay.
Does he need to go in?
He needs water.
Does anybody else need water?
I could use water.
Jerry, you good?
No, I'm good.
Jen?
Alex. Correct. Doug. Jake. Correct. Kevin. Okay. I've got it.
One of the easy ones.
Yeah. Yeah. All these single syllable names, look at that. Except for you, Kathleen, the
Yes.
entire commission is single syllable first name. Look at that.
You can call me now.
Okay, all right. What song is that?
There you go.
I'm trying to,
Paul Simon.
Paul Simon, right, of course. Any port in storm there.
Thank you.
Did Rick leave?
I thought you were bringing one for me too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He went down to his water, didn't
Yeah.
he? Did Rick go down and do that?
Yeah, you did.
Rick,
Oh, maybe that's it, got it.
Is that thunder?
Sounds like it.
Sweet, bring on the more rain.
yeah.
I'm not looking forward to any burn bans in Clear Creek County this year.
Good.
So the more rain we get, the better.
So far, so good though,
Yeah,
yeah.
as long as we get a couple rains a week, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, you know,
Have y'all seen the pictures of, Green Mountain Reds lately? Like, last couple of years, it's been down like really low and it's almost full again.
it's been a good year.
Yeah, so
We need
far.
like a whole row of those.
Yeah, we just need like, one of those 100-year floods, which would be bad for a lot of people, but,
For those of us who live along the creek.
Yeah, it would be good for y'all.
Thank you.
Or even, one of those 100-year, 120-inch snowfalls.
That's what brings those floods on.
I do some work for Mount Crested Butte, and I talked to them the other day, they still have snow,
Oh, really?
Wow.
up there in different places at the town.
Well, I remember, 3 years ago, Steamboat got 32 inches, 2 days before the 4th of July. They were snowboarding and skiing on the 4th of July.
Yeah, those are great times. Well, all right, it is 20 minutes after 8. I've been given a budget of 29 minutes. And we will be able to do that. So, you have this outline that I'm gonna follow. And yes, it's 11 pages long, but you'll be surprised how fast we managed to get through it.
Good.
And interrupt me with questions, but I'm glad that it comes after the 2 hearings we had.
Yeah.
Because we really have some live material, some good
Absolutely.
examples that, kind of good, bad, and indifferent, and that, you learn by doing in this life, and that's great. So, what's your job as a planning commission? You do 2 things. You review and submit a comprehensive or master plan to the board of selectmen. This commission hasn't done that in a while, but, regularly, every X number of years, the master plan needs to get reviewed and updated, and that is your job.
It seems like it's only 2 or 3 years since that was done.
Seems like, but I've gotten to the point where I think if something was only 3 years ago, you multiply by 2. Because it's, and that is my rule, and even then, I'm kind of just.
Well, I remember
who
going
knows?
through the last one, it wasn't that, it wasn't 6 years ago.
It doesn't feel like it was. In any event, you have a second job, and that's to review the matters assigned to you by the local land use code. And one of those matters is to review special use permits, rezoning, and you did that tonight. And that's mostly your job, is people coming here with an application to do something that under this code book, chapter 17 says, chapter 17? Chapter 17. Chapter 17 says that you either make the decision as you do for special use permits, or unless they're appealed, or you are a recommending body, like on rezoning, you make your recommendations to the board of selectmen. So that's 90% of what you do, probably, or lately 100%. you're appointed by the board of selectmen, I do want to make a point about this. It was, I forget which year, so I was the town attorney for Silverthorne for many years, 20-some years. And they had a tradition there when people would apply to be on the planning commission or the board of adjustment or any of their boards or commissions. And the mayor did a good job. He would say, do you have the time for this job? And are you willing to actually spend the time on this job? And I was impressed by him asking that question, because it's more than just showing up at the hearing, as you know. It's, you gotta read the packet to really be, and you can kind of do it on the fly if you have to. But, you know, if you've read the packet, you've seen, as Jake had, those diagrams, which really were informative. And you're kind of ready to know what was west of and what was east of the road. And if you're just doing it in the meeting, you're not in the way of thinking of the mayor and so forth, doing the full job. And I think a lot of people made application, they didn't really think about, well, what's it mean? And so sometimes you would show the applicant the board's packet for that night. And he'd say, you will be getting this twice or once a month. Do you have time to read this before the hearing? You know, or are you gonna be there on Tuesday nights? Or whatever it was. I thought that was really helpful. So there's that. There's also the study of reading chapter 17, which is pretty lengthy. And we indicated you actually, and it's slow going. There's a lot of stuff in there that won't especially pertain, but you know, take a look at the rezoning, special use. There's a section on planning commission, it's helpful, because that's the book you're applying. In any event, it says, are you able to set aside your personal views? It's a small community. And of course not, but I make a distinction between your personal views and your personal experience. You know, your personal views, I don't like that guy, I've never liked that guy, and here he is for an application. That's your personal view.
You can't let that get involved.
You can't. Your personal experience in the town, yes, it rains a lot, yes, it snows, or there's a wind, or, you know, that's areas in shade, I know it is, after the, you know, it's the valley of gloom here, you know, especially in the winter, right? But that's personal experience, that's fine, but you see why I make the distinction. And because your job now is to be more fair. You're not just a member of the public anymore. You're wearing a different hat and a different job, and you are required to be more impartial and set aside the fact that you just don't like that guy. You know, that's important. So, scope of review, the applicant is in charge of its application, not you, and so you're not the ones that say, okay, this is what you ought to apply for. Now, I'll make correction to that, or at least an exception to that, in special use land, because we're just doing that now. And you are refining what the town could do as the applicant, and you have the right to do that. And you have the right to do that to the prior applicant too, and I disagree that you didn't put any controls on her, because you did. Parking, we want to be looking over your shoulder on the parking, make sure it isn't a 6-month deal, and then there's no parking and people are out on the street, you know, parking and jamming that up, and I forget what the other two conditions were. But, so in special use review land, special use permit land, you have a little bit more of a job, but in the end, it is the applicant that's got to say, yes, I'm gonna do that, I'm not gonna do that. And here's my application. I'm not gonna do it, you can vote me up or down, but that's where I'm coming from, and that's okay. You stay within the limits of the code and the plan. You're appointed rather than elected, and so I had a Silverthorne council member that every single darn land use application that involved residential housing as a realtor would say, now tell me, what price point are you gonna sell these houses at? Is that relevant at all to whether or not you're gonna approve a PUD for 10 units? No.
Not only is it not relevant, it's kind of a conflict of interest.
Yes, especially if that, and we'll talk about conflicts, it's here in the speech. But, his name was Keith, and I just, you know, Keith, I told him not to, and you could tell he just couldn't help it, because he was really interested in that. And you might be really interested, you know, and I've got I represent the city of Weaver, John Merritt, city attorney, have been since the 90s, and there's an architect on one of the boards who asks those questions. And sometimes it's relevant, but you know, architectural questions aren't relevant to a rezoning. You're moving it from this zone district to that zone district. And you know, but very often the applicant will do this, they'll show pictures and renderings of the buildings they're gonna build, even though the question here isn't the buildings, it's the zoning. And because they want the buildings to look good and there's trees around them, and you know, they wanna kind of sell the rezoning. But that's not what's in front of the council, and it would always inspire that guy to ask about roof pitch, and that's not what's in front of us today, you know, I'm very much what's on our plate to eat tonight, not what it could be or what's on our plate to eat tonight, so there's that. You have some tools, you have the ability, you've got, and the comp plan I've said is not regulatory, meaning it's not the same as the book, it's not the same as the code book. And you'll see that because when you get to the comp plan, it will say, this area should be devoted to this. It's encouraged that this happened here. The book says this shall or shall not. And so but it's true that land use applications have to be consistent with the master plan, but that's not, in my opinion, a good reason to deny by itself. I always ask that there be other reasons, because it's a thin reed, it makes me nervous if an application is denied exclusively on the basis of the comp plan. I see them occasionally, but I sure would like a little help. The 3 mile plan, that's a sub of the comp plan that's required to be in place before you can annex property. Okay, talk about zoning briefly. And we have a traditional zoning structure in this book. You have zoning by district. There are uses by right, no conditional uses, special review, and prohibited uses, right? So the way the book's set up is, when you go to a given zone district, here are the list of uses you can do, here are the list of uses that you can do by special review, so uses as of right, all you gotta do is get a building permit. Special review, you gotta come here and get tortured, you know, by the commission. If it's not on those 2 lists, it's prohibited. You can't do it. So if you can't find junkyard as a use either by right or special use review in the hillside residence, whatever it is, then you can't do a junkyard no matter what. So that's the traditional setup, and that is how this book is set up. For rezoning, because people say, well, I want to rezone this from this zone district to this other one so that I can do this different use. You've got a series of tests, and they're right there in the code. I quoted the code 1712-080, and it's all about whether there's been a change in the neighborhood or the land uses next door that would say, you know, it's the wrong zone district. We said it was gateway, commercial, but it really needs to be, another zone district. And really, the things need to have changed, but what needs to have changed is really a subjective determination, and it's yours. Maybe there's more traffic, maybe the street's been widened, maybe other properties next door have developed commercially, and now it's just a residence, and it ought to be rezoned to commercial. If you drive from the state capital east on Colfax, I grew up in unincorporated Adams County, way out there. So when I would get on the Colfax bus, way out past Fitzsimmons, where I grew up, Colfax was just, there were houses on either side. And the further you got into Denver, then all of a sudden commercial started. And then the depth of the commercial on either side of Colfax, as you go west down to the state capital, kept getting thicker. So that's an example of how the conditions on the border between the residential, the commercial Colfax and the residences behind Colfax on either side have changed. And if you go back to 1892, there'll be residents at Colfax and Broadway, right? But the conditions have changed, and so that's how that's the example I use for what you're kind of looking at when you're thinking about rezoning. And the rezoning cases that are the toughest are always on the line, right? Last night I was in a council meeting for the town of Mount Crested Butte, where I'm the town attorney, and I zoomed in for that. And there was a rezoning, and these people want to take a single family lot that had an A-frame on it from the 70s and upzone it to allow 4 buildings, 4 townhouses, right? And on one side of this lot were other single-family lots, and all the people owning those single-family lots showed up and testified and said, this neighborhood has not changed, and you should not change this. And the applicant, of course, said, well, what about all the stuff on the south side of this lot? It's the zone district I would like it to be on, and the lot was right in the middle. And you're wanting to know, the board turned it down, but I think they would have had a reasonable basis to go either way. Those are the tough cases. Hopefully you won't get too many of those. All right, subdivision site planning, we have subdivision here. What I do run into is C3, bottom page 2. You know, subdivision gets approved as if it's in compliance with the zoning and the regulations. Subdivision isn't the time where you decide what the right use is, right? Because that use is already there. It's already given zone district and given density. It happens to me all the time for my Wheat Ridge client. You know, that's a city that's largely contained. It's not growing much because there's other cities all the way around it, right? So you have these old greenhouses that have been abandoned. Wheat Ridge is the carnation city. Raised the most carnations in the nation in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. Now those greenhouses have gone out of production, and there's, you know, an acre or two where the greenhouse used to be that are now grassy fields, but they're zoned, you know, for residential at a given density. And when the subdivision application comes in, the council room fills up with people that say, we don't want houses there. And well, that of course left the barn back when the zoning got approved. This is just how to divide the land up, but you're not making the zoning decision, that's already made. That's a tough sell and a tough story to tell the public when they show up, but in part, it's your job. Planning unit development, we have that here, it's kind of like special zoning. Special uses, I'm not sure I need to spend much time on that on page 3, because you've been down that road. So we'll keep going. Exactions and conditions, you did put some conditions on both of these. And there's a difference between an exaction where you're getting something out of the developer that the town largely will own. Fees, parks, school dedications, street improvements, that's stuff the town will own, that's an exaction. A condition is stuff that you make them do, but they end up owning it. So, building height, parking, access improvements on the site, snow storage, drainage, these are all things they end up owning. I'm gonna skip the rest of that page and go over to page 5, quasi-judicial actions. That's what you do most of the time. It's 90% where you're distributing land use applications. You sit as judges. And that's where the kind of aspect of me that's a little formal comes in. And I confess that I'm a formal person. And I am comfortable in my skin, that's who I am, and I'm not gonna change. You're not gonna see me showing up, you know, in a sweater. It's not what I do. And I respect everybody's choices. This is my choice. I'm kind of a formal guy, and that leads me to kind of want to stick to more or less, you know, a script and the order of events, so that what you don't end up with is a New England town style meeting. We've all heard of New England town style meetings. Everyone in town is on the board. When they have their town meetings, once or twice a year, everybody shows up and everybody talks until they're out of gas. And I have been to meetings like that. And at some point, though, there is a difference between the applicant and the board and the opponents. And we all have a job, and we all have a role, and we all have a time that we need to be listened to. And I get it. I live in the real world, and most of the communities I represent are small communities, mostly in the mountains. And so I understand that these are people that know each other. Come on, you know, when Craig Abrahamson shows up, he's not just an applicant, he's Craig, come on. Let's have a dialogue with him, and let's interrupt him, and he can interrupt us. And that's true if you're at the RAM, which is, you know, as soon as it gets rebuilt, having beers. You interrupt each other all the time, that's fine, but you know, that isn't what this is. And there is, you can be, and the note I made was, you can be respectfully, informally formal, I guess. You know, you can still, you don't lose your cool card, you know, by having a little structure. You can still be respectful and human in small town, and still have some structure, and that's what we have tonight. You know, there's times that, okay, we're done with this, and we're moving on, and yes, the person would like to say more. Everyone always wants to say more. Never a time when people say, you know, I've really said enough, I would like to pretend myself at this point. That will never ever happen, you know, and so you gotta get people, and we did. Sometimes, because people come to this with different skills. Some people are really good, they've got their 3 points, they know exactly how to make them, they're done. There are other people that this is probably the first time they've been in a setting like this, and we can't expect them to put on a case like I would, with a little outline of beginning, a middle, and an end, and thank you very much. You know, and so you gotta, but it also means you, and the chair was good about, brought them along a little to the point where you got it done. So, in any event, let's talk about quasi-judicial actions, because everything but the comp plan is quasi-judicial for you, which means that it's, people are asking you to decide the case based upon rules of the book. And it's, you act as judges when you do that. Now, it's quasi-judicial, so it's a little less formal, judges, but nevertheless, you're rendering a decision that is gonna affect them. And then it's done, you know, the next step necessarily would be the oldest court. And so it's important that there be some, that you act like a judge did. So for example, if Rick sells me his Jeep and says it's a really great car, and Rick's very proud of his Jeep, as you probably know. But it's, you know, the transmission or the collections of, is it a collection car? Oh, it's an automatic. Oh, man. Well, that's not a Jeep at all.
Hey, he's got an electric Jeep.
Okay then, well, I'm an electric car. But anyway, Rick sells me the Jeep, he claims that the transmission, still has one of those, is just got repaired, turns out not. So I sue him, and Jen is the judge. And Rick sees me take Jen out to lunch, and before the trial, and bend her ear like that about how it's a lousy car. We would all agree, I can't do that. You don't see one of the parties taking the judge out. You know, you do not, you see a little of that Supreme Court apparently.
Yes.
You know, you don't do that. You know, you just, it's wrong, it's not fair, right? And I know it's hard for you to think of yourselves in that position, but you are, actually. And so it's important to bear that in mind, and in part because it has to do with prejudgment. When you have these cases, again, I think it was I think it was a quicker chance. We're gonna have a rezoning hearing. He served in the staff, and he's as the staff finishes, we haven't heard from the applicant yet, we haven't heard from the public yet, and Councilmember X says, well, I'm a no-go on this, I just want you to know. Oh, great. Same thing if Jen, the judge, says, before I even put on my case, well, how you would feel that was really unfair. So I had to take him aside and say, Bill, you can't do that because he hadn't even heard the evidence yet. And because he was dying to say no, and he was kind of wired up to not want upzoning to happen in this area. But I said, hold your fire. Guess what? You are the guy that gets to vote. It's not like you better say it now or you won't get a chance. Come on. You're the guy who gets the last say here. So hold your fire and keep your powder dry. You're gonna have your time. So don't because otherwise what you're signaling is that you have made your mind up, and that's an unfair, you're really being unfair to the applicant. So be a little careful with that. The questions tonight I thought were fine. You know, they were pointed, but I was not completely sure where y'all would come down until the end, and that should be how it is. Until you start discussing it amongst yourselves, then you can show your cards. So
Can I say something real quick? Because like what happens at town hall is the applicant will be like, oh, I just wanna talk to Jake, I know he's on the planning commission.
Yeah.
Like, that always comes up, and it's like, well, no, you can't talk to him on the side, so maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they,
Yeah.
well, you just said that, but
Yeah, I appreciate
it
it.
happens nonchalantly, I mean,
Yeah,
it's like, and it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's a small community, and what will happen is the people either, and Jen will be good about saying, I'm sorry, but you'll have to come to the hearing, here's when it is. Right, and come to the hearing, come to the hearing. So actually, that gets me to page 6, ex parte contacts. When you do get those, because people trapped in the vegetable aisle, you know, because again, it's a small community, they will do that all the time. And why should you avoid them? Well, you want to, you know, avoid the idea that you have made up your mind ahead before the trial, for God's sake. And y'all has 4 ways, not 3, but 4 ways to avoid this when you are trapped in the vegetable aisle. Door number 1 is you say, you know, it's quasi-judicial and you can only, and their eyes will glaze over because they will, and you know, you can try that. Door number 2 is, it's difficult for me to explain that the town attorney says I can't talk to you, you have to come to the hearing. If that works, I'm all about whatever works. So use any of these tools. Door number 3 is the best one, I think, which is, I can't listen to you. If I did, I'd have to step down and not vote on this, because I would have, you know, compromised myself, and you want me to be there, don't you? Door number 4 is, you know, I think I hear my wife calling me, I'm sorry, I gotta be there. Right? So it's probably 3 or 4, but, you know, use any of them that you can. But it still happens, you don't know that they're gonna ask you about this case until they ask you, right?
Yeah.
So I'm fine with, when you figure it out, you go, no, you gotta come to the hearing. And if they really bend your ear for a little while, the Band-Aid I use is we do a little Q&A sometimes. Is it true, and you reach out to me ahead of time, and you say, okay, you know, council member or planning commission member X, is it true that, you know, Jen bent your ear at the grocery store for 15 minutes? Yes. What did she tell you? She said she was opposed to the project. Did you tell her to come to the hearing? Yes. It doesn't matter if she came. It matters that you told her that. Do you believe you can render an impartial decision based upon the evidence you're about to hear? Yes, you're off to the races. But if she took you to lunch and you spent a good solid hour, you can't really cleanse that very well, can you? Because that's way too long a story to tell. But if you did get trapped in that way, yeah, if you do get trapped in that way, you know, call me up or through Jen, and I can assist in doing that with Q&A. I do that sometimes. You might get letters and emails, because you can't stop them, right? Just make sure that they go to the staff, and the staff put them in the packet or route them to all of you. Last night in this press conference, there were like 5 letters from people that some of them had come to council members, but they just turned them around to the town clerk, we put them all in the packet, problem solved. So there's that. We can skip all the way to page 7, roles and responsibility, the role of the chair. And the chair's here, the chair's the role model. You act affirmatively to control behavior, you know, kind of set the tone for the meeting. And at some point, move people along. You know, it's a small community, and people like to tell jokes. The Board of Selectmen are just joke-o-rama. I love those people to death, but they are joke-o-rama, and it does worry me a little, because amongst them, they're not offended, it's fine, they're having beers. But you know, if you're watching this, and you've never been here, and your one impression of government in the town of Georgetown is people acting like they're at the bar, and the poor applicants here, and they're laughing and a lot of side stuff, that worries me. You can be informal, I'm not saying you have to be formal like me, but there's a difference between, you know, informality. There's 2 kinds of informality, and I worry a little bit. And I tell them, it's not telling tales out of school. I told the board this, and you know, they're pretty good, and then they relapse. But be mindful of that. Just be thinking about who's watching instead of who's in the room. It's how does this play, really, and how should it play? So there's that. I'm on page 8 already of 11. So I worry about this more in larger communities, you know, sticking to the agenda, focusing on discussion. At some point though, and you've been to a cocktail party, and every 20 minutes, there's like 20 people are talking, there's a little silence, right? And then the conversation starts up again, we've all been there, right? I apply that here. On some hearings, you know, there's discussion, and you've kind of plowed the ground. And there's this magic time and emotion to move the sucker along and be perfect. But if you don't make it then, you're gonna plow that ground again. And at some point, you don't, you know, there's always more to say. But, you know, knowing when, as I said, knows the art of suggesting when the time is right to act. And any of you can do that. You know, and I'm not saying you cut off discussion, because it is really important that the applicant get a fair hearing. But at some point, you've heard it, you know, and they're gonna tell you again how they feel, and they finish, and they're gonna add a little, but, you know, diminishing returns. So you gotta pick the time. Taking testimony, let's see, courtesy and demeanor, we've kind of had that. This business about the person seeing this town is the only time they're gonna see it. I really am concerned about that, or that drives me a lot. People have their little notes, you know, that they practice, and you know, you need to hear them. And I was very proud of you, you did. You were really very patient. That was important. Now, the outcome was that the Russells did not get the outcome they wanted. Americans understand that there's a 50% chance.
They sort of got what they wanted.
They got a little bit of both worlds. They did get what they did.
They did. But, and the point I want to make around that is that people get it, but they don't always get what they're looking for. What really frosts them is that they don't feel they were heard. Yeah. And you voted no. Man,
I think they felt like they were heard.
And absolutely, they were heard. And that, I think, was, in fact, that case was a really good example of giving them that opportunity. Because sometimes you say yes, sometimes you say no, but Americans really believe strongly in their right to you know, be in a public meeting and say how they feel. If you cut that off, and then you deny it, that's tough. So that's the main point. Just make sure they know they have the right to speak, actually listen to them, and thank people for showing up. I had a committee chair in the state legislature. I was a lobbyist with Colorado Municipal League for 6 years. So I spent a lot of time testifying in front of committees, and the State Senate Affairs Committee Chair Jim Brandon never voted with the league ever. And I knew that when I was testifying. But he always listened to me, got eye contact with me, and he always genuinely and earnestly thanked me for testifying. And that was ages ago, and I never got his vote. But I'm thinking of him, and he made a huge impression on me because you know, he acknowledged my right to testify and the seriousness of what I was saying. He wasn't gonna vote for me, but he treated me seriously. And when I lost in his committee, I was less upset. And that's the reason I think that was true here tonight. So there's that. Now we're going over to page 9, taking action and the top page 9, consider all the testimony and evidence. I tell that to the leaders people all the time. The room fills up, and the room fills up with people, top page 9. The room fills up with people, and they're all opposed to this. And you do not feel that you're not an applause-o-meter, right? There was this old 50s television show where if the audience of the contestants, and when the audience would applaud for contestant A, B, or C, there was an applause-o-meter that measured the volume of the applause. Exactly. And whoever got the most on the applause-o-meter got the washing machine.
Wait, what show is this?
It was, I don't know, it might have been Queen for a Day, or one of them.
It could have been,
They were late this.
I have too young for this.
And you see where I'm headed with this. Are you an applause-o-meter? No, is the answer. And the public will want you to be. When we filled up the room with people that hate this, you have to say no.
Yeah.
No, I'm always trying to be mindful of the people that aren't in the room, right? Because you represent the whole community, not just who happened to show up tonight. It's good they showed up, you give them a lot of weight, but that does not predetermine what you will do. Options for action, look at that, 3 doors, approve, with or without conditions, deny, continue. Okay, let's see, amendments to motions, we did that tonight. A good way to add one or a series of conditions, look at that, we actually, that's the ordinance, we did that tonight. So let's see what else I've got left. Ethics and conflicts of interest, I'm on page 10, that's the next to last page. The main thing to remember about this is, you know, with conflict of interest, it's, remember what Tom Cruise said to Cuba Gooding Jr. in the locker room in the movie Jerry Maguire. What did he say? Show me the money. Very good, excellent. So we apply that to conflicts of interest because under the state statute, which I helped to write, actually, the current revision, I was in the league, and the case law, your conflicts of interest are largely financial. They're not, oh, I know that guy, or friends. That's not a conflict. It's, do you stand to gain or lose money in some way as a result of your action on this application? Yeah.
As a builder, say for instance, something comes across our table that, I may be building, I would have to recuse myself, correct?
Yeah, you would, exactly. But if it's gonna just add inventory to the town, and you might or might not get to build a house on that lot, but you are not connected with the applicant, you don't have a contract with the applicant, that this is approved, you will get to build a house on lot 2. If none of that is true, you do not have a direct financial interest, and you're fine.
Okay.
And Keith, the realtor in Silverthorne, I would
That's
always
something I would
make.
always probably have to discuss with you beforehand, I'm guessing.
Exactly, yeah, and that's very much my job, and I often get those questions, and I've got the answers, because I've had a lot of experience navigating these fact patterns, and I can tell you, yeah, you're okay, you're not okay, here's how to navigate it. And sometimes it's the appearance of impropriety, and we do a little Q&A. Is it true you're a builder? Yes. Do you have any connection with this particular applicant? No. Is it true that if it's approved as possible, you might be able to build on this, you know, have work here? Yes. But you don't have any current contracts, is that right? Correct. And you're able to vote. What I've just done is clarified that the appearance of impropriety is only that, and it's not a conflict, and you're allowed to vote. So I've
While
listened.
you're on conflict, I would
Yeah.
like to add one thing. It says, you know, disclose the conflict and then step down. On various boards and commissions I've been on, you not only have to step down, but leave the room.
Absolutely, and here's why.
And because I gotta tell you, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to in this town where
Yeah,
people
they
just, oh
just
yeah,
stay.
I got conflict.
And they stay. And I'm glad to say that for 2 reasons. One, I'm almost done, I promise, thanks for staying. I used to do a lot of special counsel work for Steamboat Springs, and the mayor at that time worked for the ski area, and about every 3rd item on their agendas in that era had to do with the ski area as employer. And when we get to that agenda item, everyone on the commission, council would look at it and they go, I know. And he'd go out and he'd get coffee for people, and when it was, that item was over, he'd come back in. Later, I was actually at the legislature in a Senate committee when they revised the conflict statute. And I had a state senator say, I'm gonna put an amendment on this statute that says, not only do you have to disclose conflict and step down, but you must, quote, refrain from attempting to influence the other members of the body in voting on the matter. And that got into the law, and it's in the law now.
That's good.
And so that's why I'm so glad you asked that question, because how do you prove that you refrain from attempting to influence? If you're not in the room, like the mayor of Steamboat Springs, then you're good.
Well, and then the rest of the people feel like they can vote however they want to
Yep.
without being
Without you there.
persuaded.
I've had people, I've had people wanna, oh, I'll just sit there and give nasty expressions to the rest of you. And like, you know, okay, let's see, I'm on the last page. What to do if you have a conflict? First, you call me ahead of time if you think of that, and I can always give you, and you can come to the meeting if I'm not here, and you can say, I talked to Jerry Dahl, town attorney, I'm okay on this. Or I talked to Jerry Dahl, town attorney, he says I've got to step down. Either way, I'm your get out of jail free card, and I want to be used that way.
I'm guessing you would show up to the meeting, recuse yourself, leave the room, and then once that discussion's over, you
Yep,
go back.
and you're back.
Yeah,
Yep. And in Steamboat, they would deputize somebody to go get Mayor so-and-so.
Right.
we're done with that item and you can come back. So you disclose the conflict, you step down, you don't vote, and bail out of the room, take the wonderful opportunity, go to the bathroom, get, coffee. That's my talk. Thank you for staying a few minutes. I was 35 minutes,
Well,
not
at the
29.
very least, we, managed to not have it drag on for
Yeah,
hours.
oh, yeah.
Jerry, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Since we're in context,
We gotta do minutes.
yeah,
in the last hearing that we had.
yeah,
It was awkward for me as the town administrator,
I know.
because I know more, and yet I'm the applicant, and yet, was that what I did, which I know felt awkward for me to do it, and then look at you, because I'm going, this is really an awkward situation, you basically passed a motion that prevented us from doing what we wanted to do in the whole first place. So, could you expound on that? What would be the most appropriate way for a future situation?
Yeah, well, ideally, you think, as you're seeing that happen, you make it part of your application, or you make it part of your presentation. On this one, it came out of nowhere because if the road condition hadn't been applied, you would have had no problem.
Right.
But the imposition of the road condition created a problem.
Right.
And ideally, I would have wanted you to speak up before we were all done.
Yes.
Because that meant we had to do the time machine, which is really not impossible. I've had experience with that too. I'm old enough now that, a lot of things repeat. But it's not my favorite way of doing it. I think it's confusing to the public. Does that look fair? What's going on? So at the same time, if you were a regular old anybody else that hadn't said anything, your only avenue would be appeal. And there's an appeal from the planning commission to the board of selectmen allowed on special use permits in the code. And it could be an appeal to the board of selectmen to remove that condition or adjust that condition.
I see.
That was awkward. I don't have a really good solution for it, because what happens in special use land is that you close the hearing, you have a motion, and individual commissioners come up with stuff that you didn't see coming. And that's okay. That's not a pejorative. I mean, that was their job tonight. They did their job based upon what they heard, what they thought, what we all thought was the right thing. And, the applicant might not like the condition. Well, kind of too late, unless you're able to do the time machine, which you can do. And that's happened to me before in City Wheat Ridge, where that would come up, and you can actually take a motion to reconsider in that meeting or the next regular meeting. Made sense to do it tonight, so it's all done.
Yeah.
It's
just awkward as an administrator and an applicant. Because as an administrator, I would have added to the discussion of saying, could you answer that? Or I think another question I have too is, in this situation, because this is awkward, I'm trying to defend the town's interest and influence at the same time. I'm trying to, hey, this is hurting us, I can't believe you're gonna do that. But is it appropriate, because we started going in that direction, and I was reading in here that, but in the situation of the ornaments, the conditions.
That's a good example, by the way.
Yeah. So
it's a tool that I think helps you get to the finish line.
It's excellent, but what if you're in a situation where, she turned to me and asked me, are you willing to do that? And I'm going, yes. What if you eliminate that discussion and you add a condition, I'm like, I'm not willing to do that.
Pretend you're just Tom, Dick, and Harry applicant. Same thing can happen to you. And truthfully, towns are subject to their own regulations, and they have to play by their own rules, unless they write themselves an exception for themselves, and that can happen. That you actually can, but the Georgetown has not. There is no provision in this code that says, okay, these are the rules applicable to, these rules don't apply to the town. I think there are a few other places, but by and large, you take that risk. And the fact that the town is the applicant, to be cruelly blunt, does not make it special. It is no different than the applicant for the first case tonight. No different. Unless the town has enacted a law saying, we don't have to apply for special use permits generally for a town purpose. The Board of Selectmen has the right to put that in the code, but they have not. So until they do, you're treated largely the same as any other applicant.
And that also has to be voted on, correct?
Yeah, for that change, that would have to, the Board of Selectmen would have to run an ordinance and amend this code.
Right, so, I guess I'm trying to just clarify to make sure I understand, if I wasn't the applicant, okay, just a regular person, like, that's the normal situation, very rarely am I bringing applications. But in a normal situation, where is it appropriate, so this is where I'm asking to make sure they understand, is it appropriate for a board member to say, okay, I have a condition, are you willing to do that? Or you don't talk to the applicant, you make a decision here and say, I have a condition, I would like this to happen. Is that appropriate, or is it appropriate to ask the applicant?
You know, typically, I like to have those questions of the applicant during the applicant's presentation.
Okay.
But here, we didn't know that that would be a problem until later. And that made it harder. That's why you have this reconsideration tool, which is kind of your last chance. But, you know, I vastly prefer to be a part of the dialogue between the applicant. But I'm not faulting the commission tonight because that issue just really couldn't or didn't raise its head until we had completed all the testimony.
Well, a lot of that was that during the discussion, these pieces of, you know, of the probability of change to that site over a long period of time came up, and as that came up and bubbled up, I thought, is this a compromise that the town could live with?
And I guess the advice I would give, or the caution I would give would be, as you're thinking of those questions, don't close the hearing until you're really done thinking about all your questions.
Yeah.
Because when the hearing's open, it's open, you can ask, there's all, you can do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, and maybe it was my fault for kind of getting it, and let's keep moving here.
Yeah.
But, you know, the hearing had gone on quite a while, there'd been a lot of back and forth. And that's why I've seen chairs say, are there any other questions? Any other concerns? Just eyeball each member.
So, but that would have been the most appropriate time to discuss, hey, if we're talking about conditions, applicant, you know, since you're discussing with the applicant, that's when that's appropriate.
Yep. Well, you've been, I overstayed my welcome, and you've been swell about it, so thank you. See you in another meeting.
Okay, we're just gonna do the minutes real quick.
Oh, yeah, right, motion to approve minutes?
Do we have any changes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
Nice. She made the motion, I think. Jake seconded.
Doug moved and he seconded, Jake, thanks.
I'm making that up. That was great.